Welcome back, everybody at home. Welcome back to part 2 of day 2 of the People's Reset UK. We're just going full on. We've got 5 more speakers in this next session, so we're not going to waste too much time. This next theme we're focused on is called Agorism and Parallel Networks, and I know that might be a new idea to some of you, so John's going to share a little bit about the history of that, and we're going to play a video too in just a moment.
Thanks. Good for Derrick, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. How many people are familiar with agorism? All right. Okay, so how many people are familiar with libertarianism? Right? Okay. It's a very loaded term. We like to refer to ourselves as voluntarists these days, which basically means all human relationships should be voluntary. You guys get with that? Right? That means no coercion, no people being forced to do anything. But the question that naturally arises is, how do we get from here, a statist society, New World Order, World Economic Forum, to there, a genuinely free society where we can live in harmony together? And agorism aims to answer that question. It was a strategy more so than a philosophy laid out by a guy named Samuel Edward Konkin III. He was a Libertarian Party member, but he got real frustrated because a lot of libertarian politics was just banging your head against the wall. That's basically the same thing that every politics is, right? So ultimately, he's like, if we want to create the free society, it's up to each and every one of us to take action towards creating the free society by building parallel networks and alternative institutions. So what this looks like is, rather than being caught up in a reactionary paradigm where we're constantly responding to the plans and the chaos of the predator class, we take responsibility for creating the world that we all desire by trading outside the system, by getting together with like-minded freedom lovers, working together, building together, raising the kids together, growing our own food. And in doing this, we can insulate ourselves from this beast system. But more importantly, we can create that world that we all desire and we all deserve. And a huge piece of agorism is what's known as counter-economics. Counter-economics. You guys know the counterculture back in the 60s? That's pretty hip here in the UK too. Thinking Austin Powers just popped into my head. Yeah, baby. But the counterculture, that was the counter-establishment culture. They were pushing back on the man and against the war. Well, counter-economics is counter-establishment economics. And so a huge, huge piece of it has to do with opting out of their CBDC beast system, using alternative currencies, engaging in entrepreneurialism, or trading outside of their system. And I think it's really important that we step into this space because, as we know, they're very much trying to control us through money systems and through surveillance and through digital ID. So this is a positive outcome and this is a positive strategy, not just because we need to protect ourselves from that, but more importantly, because we need to create the freedom that we desire, freedom that lasts for the future generations to come. So Derrick's going to do a little intro here for this cool video he's got, and I hope you guys will participate in building this world with us, and you already are for being here. Thank you.
Awesome. Make some noise for John Bush. John will be speaking tomorrow on part of building free and conscious communities. So yeah, we're going to play a quick video in just a moment, and I just wanted to add real briefly to what John said. You don't really have to even be deeply steeped in Samuel Konkin's work. If you've read my work or you've heard my videos, I've talked about it. But the point is, by being here, you're kind of already doing it. As you've noticed, our whole focus is not as on like, let's go vote and change the system or let's violently overthrow the system, but it's all about building new institutions. And we specifically take inspiration from Samuel Konkin. And this short video will tell you more about his life. Let's go ahead and play that.
Samuel Edward Konkin III was born in Saskatchewan, Canada on July 8, 1947. After graduating high school, Konkin entered the University of Alberta, where he graduated with honors in 1968. Soon after, he arrived at the University of Wisconsin to begin graduate studies in chemistry. In 1971, he moved to New York City to seek a doctorate in theoretical chemistry at New York University. Konkin believed in forming alliances between left and right factions of activists in the hopes of building parallel economies, or what Konkin referred to as the counter-economy. From 1970 to 1975, he developed his libertarian theories about the counter-economy, taking inspiration from marketplaces in ancient Greece known as the Agora. He believed that activists could withdraw their consent from the state by building parallel economies and parallel institutions that compete directly with the state. Although Konkin had achieved a Master of Science degree in chemistry, he reportedly refused to turn in his doctoral thesis because he, quote, didn't want to spend the rest of my life working for the military-industrial complex. Konkin also wanted to work full-time in the libertarian movement and the counter-economy. In 1975, he gave up his university studies and left New York, taking a 3-week trip across the United States to relocate to Southern California. In 1980, he published his epic book, The New Libertarian Manifesto. In his book, he outlined his agorist philosophy and the strategy of counter-economics. In late 1984, he founded the Agorist Institute as his latest effort to propagate his ideas. Konkin was less active in the mid-1980s and early 1990s, but he re-emerged on the libertarian scene in the late 90s, early 2000s, when he was actively posting in libertarian forums on the internet. On February 23, 2004, Konkin died in West Los Angeles, California, at the young age of 56. In the 20 years since his passing, Samuel Konkin's philosophy of agorism and the strategy of counter-economics have gone on to inspire millions of people who are seeking alternatives to the ever-increasing violence of the state. Although Konkin did not live to see agorism become a popular underground philosophical school of thought or witness the growth of interest in parallel economies, we honor his efforts to lay the foundation upon which our movements are building. His ideas continue to serve as the inspiration for the Freedom Cell Network and the Greater Reset activation. Samuel Edward Konkin III, we honor you and
thank you. That's the final word there. I was like, and we continue your work. I'll add that in for us. So it's interesting, isn't it, when you hear things like that and what John Bush had to say about how we can orientate ourselves during these times. And there's this old phrase that one of my old mentors shared with me. He said, rather than trying to tear down someone else's tower, why don't you start building on your own? And it kind of plays out in the world of business, but interpersonally as well. And this for me is where it's really important that we start to look at what can we do to embrace the alternative or the counter economics. So leading directly from what John's just spoken about. And I know people are still kind of grappling with the technology that comes with this and all the jargon, which is why I'm delighted that my dear friend Sam is going to be joining us, because his whole mission is to help to demystify some of the things around the emerging space of blockchain, crypto, so you can understand its practical application and how we can take that philosophy and make it practical. So he's here with us to share some amazing content. Some of you may have already joined. Who joined Sam's workshop yesterday? Give me a whoop. Thank you. So I met Sam. I was invited to a talk a couple years ago by my friend Deborah, who's in the room here somewhere. And she just introduced him as this guy, Sam. No other information. And I get all these kind of invites over the last few years. And I thought, what is this? But she said, trust me, you're going to love what this guy has to say. And I'm so thankful I went, because we've gone on to do lots of different work together now. I affectionately called him Sam X because I didn't know his surname at the time. And he's adopted it, even though I actually know his real surname. So it's my pleasure to introduce to the People's Reset UK, Sam X, demystifying crypto and blockchain.
Thank you, Dan. Oh, am I too loud? Oh, it's all right. That's all right. Okay. Please bear with me. I've had a bit of a head cold the last few days and I'm a bit breathless. I'm sure the dark occultists would like me to stick a 6.66 centimeter probe up my nose and tell me I've got bird flu. But I think I'll stick to ginger teas and get through it that way. So I'm delighted to be here. Love being in a room full of pioneers, trailblazers, warriors. And I had the pleasure of going with Dan to the People's Reset, Greater Reset, it's called in Mexico in January. I love the vibe because it's solution focused. And one of my big bugbears the last few years is what gets pushed in the truth movement, freedom movement, are the two binaries of the fear porn and the hopium. And what I really like to say is let's talk about a middle way. There's so much we can do, because the fear porn and the hopium both lead to inaction. If you're paralyzed by we're all doomed, that leaves you in inaction. Can't do the paralyzed by fear. And if you're in the hopium, you're in action because the white hats are coming to save you. Okay. And neither of those are helpful binaries. We try to get pushed a lot and promoted. And really a middle way, there's so much we can do if we're proactive and get educated. So my main passion is education and empowerment. And then we go from there. Okay. So I'm not really from a tech background. There are amazing tech people here who are deeply steeped in crypto and blockchain technology, and it's great to harness their knowledge. As somebody who doesn't come from a tech background myself, who's been involved in crypto and blockchain for the last 4 years, but gone deep into it, hopefully what I can do is bridge the gap, okay? Because this is a topic that confuses, divides, and scares people, and that's understandable. I can relate to that. So for people who are completely new to it, I can remember what that's like to know nothing, okay? So hopefully what you do is bridge that gap, open up that door, and then you can go from 0 to 1, okay? Literally get that foundation and be open up to it. And then you can explore further in your own time, okay? Because it's a journey. And that's really important. I think that's needed. And that's been borne out by Dan said he came to one of my talk. I didn't plan to give these talks. I did a talk and I got another one. It spiraled. There obviously is a need to demystify this topic. So that's what I'm here to do. So I'll give you a quick example of how divisive this topic is. I have a little project called Crypto Cafe, which is where I give talks in cafes around the country and just educate about this topic. And I was speaking locally in Sussex and I needed to get some flyers printed out with my Crypto Cafe logo on it. I went to the local printers where I live and gave them the info. Didn't say any more, just can you run off some of those? And the reactions were so visceral. They saw the word crypto. Okay, it was a husband and wife team running this little print shop. And she said to me, don't talk about crypto. Don't talk to me about crypto. It's all too confusing. I hadn't even said anything to her. I just said, can you print them off? So that's one reaction, okay? Fear, confusion, she was overwhelmed. And then the husband appeared from downstairs. He'd obviously heard the word crypto. And he appeared like an Agent Smith from behind the counter. He sort of loomed over me. And he said, crypto's a scam. Everyone's lost all their money. Okay, and bear in mind, again, I hadn't said anything to them. I said, can you have 20 of these in A4, please? But that's how powerful it is viscerally. And again, I don't expect anyone in this room to have those kind of reactions, but because that was a reaction of real people who are running matrix scripts, okay? They really were in pure matrix fear, reading mainstream media, no idea. Now, we've got a much more educated, aware audience here, but there is still understandably skepticism, and some of those, not at that extreme level, reactions within this movement, the same about crypto, and understandably so, okay? So within the truth freedom movement, you've got this kind of divide which comes up of, are you pro-crypto, anti-crypto? I'm neither. I just want to know what crypto is and then see how we can use it to our benefit and understand it, okay? They always want you in camps, divide and rule. It's much easier to go, I'm anti it, I'm pro it. And I've got another great story that really sums up within the Awake Aware community is I created a course just to try and demystify, you know, exactly what crypto was so that people could make, you know, bold decisions themselves about whether they want to get involved with it or not. And I launched this course with Dan, and we got attacked by another content creator, okay, who had a very big channel at the time, you know, was doing lots of great content, sharing lots of truths, you know, very aware of a lot of stuff. And he attacked us saying, crypto is satanic, it's evil, these guys are promoting it, you know, you mustn't go anywhere near it, you mustn't touch it. And the great irony was, okay, as you start to understand, this guy was delivering this message on Odyssey. And Odyssey is the streaming platform that Derrick is streaming this event on for good reason, because it is built on the blockchain, right? And the reason it's so powerful is because it's built on the blockchain, it is decentralized, and so it's censorship proof. So there's a great irony. I'm not criticizing that guy. I said, but get educated first. And if you really have that belief that it's all satanic, you better get your videos off Odyssey straight away, okay? So it just shows that education is important before you have such strong visceral views on something. So for me, this crypto and blockchain, it is neutral tech, okay? And there's a full spectrum to technology, okay? Within the different ends of it, you've got really centralized dystopian control, and at the other end of it, you've got freedom, decentralization, privacy. So rather than just lump it in and go, it is this or that, I'd say it's a technology with a full spectrum, and you need to harness the good sides and understand there are dystopian sides as well. So it's very understandable there's a lot of skepticism because there is a digital dystopia that the elites are trying to build, right? Using that same technology. But it does not mean that we cannot harness the good side of that technology for our own benefit, okay? So that's often, you get that everything lumped in as one thing, whereas it's always more nuanced than that, which is why you need longer discussions. Myself and Dan often get vilified because our podcasts are too long, but it's because everything needs a longer discussion to understand those nuances, rather than what gets attention is a quick 5-minute anti or pro. It's all good, it's all bad. No, it's a full spectrum, and it's much more interesting than that when you explore it. So the rise, let's put it in perspective, the rise of crypto and blockchain, okay? So in essence, blockchain technology is the next iteration of the internet. And anybody who came to my workshop yesterday knows that my real passion is cycles, because cycles are so powerful in our world across everything, okay? And that's no difference in technology and finance. Nothing escapes cycles, and things are cyclical. So what I'm going to explain is actually blockchain and crypto is the next iteration of the internet, and the internet is going through its own Saturn return, okay? 28-year Saturn return. So often when I meet somebody who doesn't believe in astrology, first I say, well, they don't believe in astrology because of their astrology, possibly. That's why they don't believe in it. But also that when you ask somebody, did anything big shift in your life happen around 27, 28 years old? Often it did, because it's a real powerful cycle in all ways, okay, linked to Saturn, the return, you know, Saturn's transit. And I'd argue the same is happening with the internet. So the internet as we know it, really as we started to use it, came in around sort of 94, 95, when we started sending our first emails. That was the infancy of the internet. Then 14 years, so that was what Web 1.0, okay? Where it's read-only internet. You're not interacting with it, just literally going on. It's like an online magazine or newspaper. Fast forward 14 years on, so halfway through that cycle, so the internet is becoming a teenager, a pesky teenager. We have the rise of Web 2.0, okay, which is YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, social media, all these apps where you are interacting and you're giving your data and you're interacting with it, but it's still totally centralized, okay? So when you upload your video to YouTube, YouTube own it. When you upload your photos to Facebook, Facebook own it. And what we had in 2008, so 14 years on, halfway through the Saturn return, we had all that coming on. We had the rise of the iPhone and apps, okay? Now, whether you like it or not, apps have transformed the way we transact, do business. So a massive shift, okay? But 14 years on from that, and also interestingly, got so much to say, I'm trying to get it all into 25 minutes. We also had the beginning of Bitcoin. So Bitcoin's infancy around 2008, so it's coming into being. But really, we had the Web3 starting to mature at that 28-year cycle around 21, 22, 23, where we are today. So we are in the burgeoning part of Web 3.0. The internet Saturn return to it really becomes a different, different vehicle. So essentially, blockchain is enabling that. And at its core, it's about decentralization, moving away from decentralized platforms like YouTube to an example like Odyssey. Okay, so you upload a video to YouTube, all that data is stored on YouTube servers, they control it. You upload your video to Odyssey, everybody who's running the Odyssey software across the world is essentially hosting the content. So if you want to take it down, you've got to take down everybody. Same principle as Bitcoin, okay? So understanding this decentralized hosting makes it censorship proof, okay? So that guy who thought it was all evil and satanic, you mustn't touch it, he was quite rightly using it and benefiting it from its decentralization, censorship proof nature. So that's important. So we are going from apps to dApps. dApps are just decentralized applications, okay? The internet was a way of hooking up computers, and blockchain is a new way of hooking up computers, okay? The internet changed the world. Blockchain is the next paradigm shift, and it is growing at a faster rate than the internet, okay? And again, because I'm not a tech guy, you don't have to like that. I'd love to be off-grid in Bali eating mangoes every day, but I'm really about the world's going. So it's not saying, I love tech, I must get involved with it. Understand what's happening, and understand also, if you want to hold back the rise of blockchain, it'd be akin to saying, I'm holding back the rise of the internet. If that's your mission, all power to you, but understand it's a big mission. This is happening. So for me, it's taking a pragmatic approach. Where do we position ourselves? How do we harness the good sides and use that to advantage? Because there's another cycle at play, I'd argue, which is why this technological shift is happening. So we have been in the age of Pisces, okay? I won't argue exact dates, no one knows, but maybe 2,000 years worth of Pisces, and that is a water sign. Hence, when we talk about finance, we've had liquid assets, frozen assets, river banks, citizenships, all this water language. Same in the legal world, in the doc. I'm sure you're all well versed on this topic, but all that water language. And now we are moving into Aquarius in the process of doing that. And Aquarius is an air sign. So we're moving into the cloud, digital. So often the narrative that the digital agenda is completely dystopian, they're doing this. I think what happens is people often give too much credit to the power structure that they are doing everything. My argument would be they understand the cycles, they know where we are in the cycles, and they want to harness what's coming to their benefit. Just a different quality of energy, okay? They're ready. They don't want you to know who you are, where you are, or where things are in the cycle, okay? So when you understand that, we are in that shifting time, and it's happening, we can be prepared for that shift, and we can harness it. So it's a big difference. Get out that victim mentality. They're doing everything. They don't control the cycles. They're just ready to use them and harness them. But that's not a power that is unique to them. We can all do that, okay? So in essence, the whole financial system in the world, in the mainstream, okay, is going to move on to this blockchain technology. That, in essence, is not a problem if you had, beneficial people, benefic people in charge. So the technology is not a problem because actually it's a more efficient system, a cheaper system, more secure system, and in good hands, it's actually a great technological advance upon the digital system we have at the moment. Because whether or not you love your cash, there is very little cash in the world today, regardless. So most of our financial system is, well over 90% is already in digital form, okay? But a blockchain future finance system is actually an improvement on that, and in the right hands would actually challenge corruption, challenge the parasite nature intermediaries, much more transparency would be great. But we know that the current people who are running that system, that's not their intention. So that's where I do see the financial system is inevitable going on the blockchain, because there are many talented people who are not aware of what we're aware, working on this. They are not in on any evil agenda. They are just looking at technological advances. Okay, so when we talk about CBDCs, in their purest form of just having a digital currency, that's not a problem. It is the fact that this technology has capabilities that are baked in to make that programmable. Okay, the programmable nature of this technology is, again, not evil in itself, because what they're going to use for CBDCs is smart contracts. And because the word smart in there, I agree, that lots of evil stuff has smart in it. You know, when I go to the shop, I don't want to buy their smart water, thank you very much. Or, you know, not smart devices. But essentially, a smart contract is no evil thing if myself and somebody else told us we agree on the terms of it, and we are in control of it, and we decide we agree with those terms. We set up that smart contract, and it will trigger when certain conditions are met. It's a very efficient way of transacting, very transparent. The real issue is top-down smart contracts imposed on us, okay, in terms of where we don't really have a say. That's the real issue. So we talk about parallel systems. Let's look at really this use of crypto and blockchain in the terms of parallel financial systems. So firstly, just look at the main problems in the legacy system. There are many, as I'm sure you're aware, but I'm going to touch on the main two today, so I haven't got much time. We've got the main one, which is the current fiat money system we live is unsound money. Okay, I'll go into that in a bit. And we've also got the issue of censorship of transaction. Okay, the fact that our transactions are controlled in a centralized manner. So firstly, what is sound money? Okay, so sound money, and money can be anything. Okay, it's a means of storing value and transacting. But what makes money sound of anything is scarcity, and there being a cost involved to bring new money into the system. Okay, so often in the past, we talk about gold being sound money. Okay, it's got that scarcity, and it has a cost, mining, to bring new gold into circulation. Okay, that's what gives money its value and means it holds value, and therefore can be an efficient source of storing value and transacting it. What we have, and interestingly, you know, when we go back to pre-71, the United States dollar was on the gold standard. Okay, so in essence, we did at that point have a much more sound money system, because although we're passing around notes, they were promissory notes backed by real tangible assets. But since 71, we are living in a pure fiat system, completely devoid of any tangible underlying value. And that is very problematic, because you've got an unlimited supply that's being expanded all the time. And therefore, we've gone to completely unsound money, and fiat currencies always fall and die. They have to, okay, they're unsustainable. But obviously, it suits the powers that be, because they print money out of thin air. They know it's worthless. They buy real world tangible assets. And by the time that increase in the money supply is filtered down to the people on the street who don't know what's going on, a lot of them, they have been robbed of their value out of their pocket. Okay, and it can happen in a slow enough rate that maybe people don't realize it. But when you look what's happened since 1971, it is stark. Okay, so a lot of people here based in the British Isles, if your family had £100,000 in 1971 and you kept it in the bank, today, in terms of purchasing power, you are down at 99%. If you'd have sidestepped to that point and wanted to move into gold, you'd have protected your wealth. So it's not that gold has gone up hugely. It is the fact that gold has held its value and the fiat currency has collapsed, okay? So you can see how important it is to understand sound money. That's why education is really key, because the people who understood what's going on in 1971, they did move their wealth out of the dollar into tangible assets. So again, you didn't need to be a victim, but the biggest victim was you didn't know what's going on, and most people didn't know what's going on, and that's by design. So that's why education is a way out of a lot of the manipulation. Okay, it's interesting because a lot of people say to me, Sam, I don't want to get into gold or Bitcoin because the markets are manipulated. Every market's got manipulation in it, but understand the market you're in. If you understand the fiat market is the most manipulated market going with no upside, that might change one's opinion. So a lot of people think they're in this chart when they've got their pounds or dollars, euros. I think I'm happy in that straight line chart. They're really in that chart with no upside. And they're scared of commodities because they have growth curves, but it's an upward trend. So again, education changes how you see the world and how you see finance. So that's a real problem. We don't have sound money. We're being robbed of our value. The rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. And of course, what we've seen since 1971 in the sort of Western developed, in inverted commas, countries, around that time, one person on an average wage could support a family of 4 and buy a home. Look where we are today, okay? The inequality has gone crazy since that time. So this fiat system has led to that. That's what we've been living under. So often when people first get into things like Bitcoin, what's really helpful, rather than just understanding crypto, is they start to understand the problems with the legacy system and the money. So understanding sound money is really important. The other massive factor is the control aspect of the centralized system. Okay, censorship of transaction. So they control our ability to transact and do commerce. And that's a very powerful tool they have, okay? Because when you want to transact in the legacy system, you've got so many intermediaries, okay? You try moving £1 million today, whether it's all legit, it's all paid up, everything's ready, there's a lot of people involved in that transaction. A lot of people have got to okay it, okay? And if they want to blacklist you, they can absolutely stop everything. So what you've seen over the last few years, obviously, for lots of reasons, people get debanked, whether that's for what they've said or what they're doing, or they're selling something that actually does heal rather than inject the arms that don't. Those people, might be selling a really powerful product. Rather than go after them, they debank them. And all the payment platforms are in on it together, PayPal, Stripe. They're all in the big system. So that's a way of trying to control people. So that's a real problem about being in that system. And also when you're in that system, it is all linked to your person, your legal status. You are a citizen in that country, your legal name, and trying to transact to somebody else in that country, in that name. So it's all linked to that system. Okay, and if they want to shut you down, they can. But the beauty of using decentralized blockchain technology, I know people, it's not something in the future that could happen. I know people who've been able to continue trading and helping people, whether it's with education or health products over the last 3-4 years, because they've got Bitcoin, because they've been able to transact across the world, across borders, peer-to-peer, without any intermediary saying, no, that transaction can't get through. So it's been proven as a tool to help us against that censorship, that debanking, it works, okay? And that's really important. It gives us more options. So it's interesting when, let's tell a little story. I was in a crypto group and somebody had a contact in Russia when it all kicked off with Ukraine. And again, it's a great example because what happened is the SWIFT system, they sanctioned that Russia, so it got cut off from the international payment system. And at that time in chaos, stock markets go down, banks go down. And this guy wanted to get out the country and see his family in Poland, wanted to buy a car, and he was locked out of that legacy system. But because he had Bitcoin, and again, that could go for lots of, I'm not a Bitcoin purist at all, there are lots of options within it, which is looking at the basics, what's possible. He was able to transact peer-to-peer with somebody, do a transaction, buy that, and get across the border and leave. So it gave him an option that he didn't have if he was just locked in that legacy system. Okay, so it's a really powerful tool of another way of transacting. And the beauty being that within that blockchain system, it is permissionless. So when we talk about having a bank account or being in the legacy financial system, you need to ask permission to have an account. You need to give your ID, your paper. You might need to give more and more things. It's actually getting even harder. Whereas in that situation, he could approach them and he said, well, I've got £10,000 worth of Bitcoin. Can I buy a car off you? They might not even be in Bitcoin at that time. But all they've got to do, if they've got an internet connection, is they can download a wallet and have an address in 3 minutes, and they're into the network in a totally permissionless fashion. Okay, so that's how efficient it is. There's no need to ask anybody. And then when they do a transaction, it is no longer Sam or this guy, Sergey in Russia, being his citizenship at this address. It is just one address transacting with another and a decentralized pool of miners to validate that transaction. So it gives you that censorship-proof nature. So it's very powerful to be outside that legacy system where there are so many hurdles to jump through. So that's really important to understand. So at that end of the spectrum, you've got permissionless, decentralized. At the other end of the world, you've got totally permissioned, and they are building tools that are totally permissioned, walled gardens, so to speak, rather than open source at the other end. So it's important to understand that there are other options there. So understanding that's really important, and understanding also that at the core of Web3 done in a proper way, and I'm sure you've heard some great speakers this morning about it, you've also got privacy tech that can come in as well, okay? So I'm not going to go deep into all the different options. It's massive, because for me, my role is to get you from 0 to 1, and then you can understand the basics, and then there's a whole world that might open up. But of course, there are so many barriers to entry, often people don't get there. They're very wide, okay? So understand with things like Monero, there are privacy coins, there are things that give even more privacy than just having Bitcoin. But also, I always say, understand the basics first before you get so stressed about looking for a perfect panacea. Because often that's the big block to people, is they think, I've got to understand everything and I've got to get the ultimate, and I see a tiny problem. Often when me and Dan do sort of solution-based discussions or podcasts, you get a lot of people say, that's not perfect, there's a problem. But that just stops the evolution, okay? Because actually we're pioneers, we're on a pioneering path. We need to learn, we need to make better moves, improve things. Is it better? And that's what I always say, is it better than what the other solution? So you might have somebody say, I'm scared of Bitcoin because of this, this, and this. And that's fine. You might have relevant concerns. Are you scared about your fiat? Or are you completely right? So always compare the two, rather just go, I see a possible problem there. I'm not going to go in. I'm going to stay in a definite problem. Okay? So often people, I don't want that, a bit scared of that. So some people say to me, and again, I'm open to all angles, did the power structure create Bitcoin? Yeah, who possibly? I'm not scared of that argument. I'm not a purist. Did the power structure create your pounds? 100%. Guaranteed, but you're not getting rid of them. So if you say those real pure, and again, it's one of my bugbears, there's a lot of Puritanism. And often if you get stuck in that Puritan mindset, you'll go nowhere. Because it's like, there's a problem everywhere, I'm not touching it. Well, unless you are absolutely going to get off grid and have everything sorted and do that, all power to you. If you still need to function in the world, and these tools are better tools that help you, then that's making improvement. So I'm always about, are you more decentralized? Are you more sovereign? Have you learned more than before? Because on giving talks, I have met a lot of people who felt guilty. They're not sovereign enough, not decentralized enough, and they're being put under pressure. You must do this. I want to say to all you guys, there is absolutely nothing I think any of you should do, right? Because that's not my place, because you are you, and I'm me. Only thing I think we should all do is get educated and get empowered and go from there and help to lift each other up to find what resonates with each other and find what tools work for you. When there are some people been through my course and they go, that's great because crypto is stressing me out. And it's like a file that was hanging there last 3 years. I've got to get on top of that. They've done the course and they go, oh, thank God, I understand what it is and it's not for me. And they can move on. That's a brilliant outcome, because at least they create that space rather than being lost in these opinions. And is it understand, then you decide. And it's interesting because crypto really resonates with me. I'm an air sign, I'm a Gemini. Perhaps that's the reason it speaks to me. Perhaps the people who are, earth signs more into gold. Find what resonates with you, get educated about all the options, and then find what works for you, what can help you. And the other thing I'd really say is, and it came up when I was in Mexico and I loved it, amazing tech panel. And somebody in my workshop actually brought the exact same line yesterday. He's probably around. What we are in is a digital arms race. Okay. And I think rather than think, oh my God, we're up against the big guns, we're going to lose. Think about the way we can do well is actually embrace the positive decentralized tech solutions that are out there. A lot of people have been showcasing them this morning, and that will help them flourish. The more people use that, it's a network effect. We're going to get traction in these decentralized ways. We're moving away step by step. So that's my ethos, really, is making steps towards that. Is my time up? That's perfect. That's good. So out of victim, get into practice, get moving, but don't get overwhelmed thinking I've got to get straight there. Go from 0 to 1, and a whole world might open up, and let's all support each other to be empowered and move forward from here. Thank you.
Yeah, make some noise for Sam. I felt like that talk was a good way to sort of bridge the morning's discussions around technology as we move into parallel systems. So I hope you all enjoyed that. Sam will be hanging out. Go find him, talk with him. And we're going to move right into our next speaker, who I'm really excited about, because this was actually somebody that was suggested through the community. Every time we do the People's Reset, we put out a form and say, if you have anybody you want to nominate as a speaker, please let us know. And I had not heard of Nigel's work prior to this, but somebody suggested him. I looked into what he's doing, and I thought, this is perfect. This is exactly what we're looking for. And especially because he's based out here. And, those of us coming from elsewhere, some of the ideas we're talking about might not specifically apply to those folks in the UK and Europe, but I think Nigel's talk's really going to be not only challenging, so I hope you're ready to be challenged. Anybody ready to be challenged? Have your paradigms challenged a little bit? All right, Nigel, they're ready for you. Please welcome Nigel Howitt to the stage, everybody.
Thank you, Derrick. Cheers, mate. Am I on? Everybody hear me okay? Great stuff. I'm going to talk to you about fundamental ideas and illustrate their importance to the concepts of truth and knowledge, and therefore our ability to know anything, really, and also their important relationship to the concept of personal sovereignty. And that obviously relates to agorism, and obviously the ultimate concept of human freedom. So, as Derrick said, this might be quite challenging, but one of the reasons why is that you probably haven't considered these ideas I'm going to discuss with you. And I don't want to sort of upset anyone's mental apple cart or anything, but maybe just sort of suspend your judgment for the duration of the chat at least. So, yeah, one of the reasons that we haven't probably thought about these ideas is that we tend to be preoccupied with the sort of ideas in the mainstream narrative, like the pandemic and the various other sort of issues about health and so forth, climate change, and these are quite obviously questionable. But there's the sort of lower level philosophic ideas, I think, tend to sort of drift past us. They're a sort of a cultural current that we perhaps don't notice. We don't tend to question these ideas, so we're going to have a look at some of those. So I'm a philosophical truth seeker, and I have a passion for the idea, for trying to find a way or articulate and prescribe a way, a method that we can discern truth, a method for validating ideas. We're not taught this in school, obviously. We use an implicit method. We use this method implicitly, but my interest is to try and make it explicit so we can see what we're doing. And from this perspective of my work in general, and coming from a philosophic sort of perspective, I have perhaps some insights to share with you. So that's what we're going to start with. So there are four basic or fundamental ideas that are absolutely crucial to this concept of, to freedom, basically, to human freedom. And the first one of these that we can mention, and it's the least fundamental, is one that you're probably all familiar with, and it's the non-aggression principle. It's the key principle in voluntarism, or agorism, as John was mentioning previously. So we're all on board with the non-aggression principle, and what this implicitly says is that it's recognizing that there are only two ways of dealing with other human beings. One of them is by force, making them do things or deceiving them into doing things, indirect use of force. And the other way is by reasoning with them, appealing to them, explaining, trying to engage them or contract with them. Only two ways, yeah? And we're all generally in agreement that it's non-aggression, that we should reason with people. So I want to go more fundamental than that. So first of all, a very, very quick introduction to philosophy in hopefully less than 2 minutes. Philosophy is simply the study of the fundamental ideas, the basic ideas that govern every aspect of human life. And you can't escape having a philosophy. Everyone's got one. You wouldn't be able to function without one. So your only choice really is to be conscious of the one that you have. So there are 5 basic branches of philosophy. Imagine you throw a dice and you roll a 5. You see that image of dot, 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 one in the middle, forms a cross. Think of that mental image, because that's the sort of structure, if you like, of the hierarchical structure of philosophy, of the 5 branches. So coming back to the People's Reset. Oh, sorry, just to complete the brief synopsis of philosophy. The first issue that we must address, anyone living a human life must address. First thing is what's the nature of reality? What is real? Okay, and that's down in metaphysics. And then it's how do we know it? That's the study of knowledge, and that's epistemology. So these two form the base of your structure. And when you have an idea of what's real and how you know it, you're then ready to address the central issue of philosophy, which is ethics, the science of ethics, which is all about it's all about determining a code of values that should guide a human life. Really rather important, I think you'd agree. That's the central issue of philosophy. When you have a code of morality or a theory in ethics, you're then able to say, well, how should the individual man or woman interact with other people in a social context? And that's, of course, going up into the branch of politics, from ethics up to politics. And similarly, a theory of ethics also informs a theory of aesthetics or art, but we're not going to be talking about that today. So we've already mentioned the non-aggression principle in the sphere of politics. Excuse me while I wet my whistle. So with respect to this People's Reset, we are rejecting an agenda that's been prescribed for us. We're rejecting Klaus Schwab's collectivist future where we're going to own nothing and all be happy. It's the agenda of the New World Order, as I'm sure you all know. So we're rejecting one politics, and we are embracing and seeking and advocating for a politics of freedom. So these are diametrically opposed political systems. So from the point of view of fundamental ideas, it's going to be very useful to trace down and see what fundamental ideas in ethics lead to a politics of collectivism. And similarly, which theory of ethics might lead to a political situation where we're free. So let's begin by identifying what it is we don't want, the collectivist system, and what it is we do want. Collectivism is essentially a political theory that holds the group as the important thing and the individual is subordinate. Okay, the individual doesn't matter in collectivism. The individual has no rights, no property, and the group is everything. And the individual, the purpose of the individual is basically just to serve the group, give up your values to the greater good. We've all heard that one, of the group. This is the essence of collectivism. So the question is then, what idea leads that? And by the way, I mean, history has been pretty clear on the horrors of collectivism. Everything from last century, from Pol Pot's Cambodia, Soviet Russia, National Socialist Nazi Germany. These were all national examples of collectivism, and now we face it on a global scale. So collectivism, the idea of the group being important and the individual being expendable, comes from an ethical theory, okay? And it comes from the moral theory in ethics of the fact that the individual's moral obligation is to sacrifice their values to others, okay? Not about creating values and keeping them for himself. It's about producing values and sacrificing them to others. As a moral obligation, okay, that's very important. A moral theory sets out the right way for a human being to act. Okay, so if you don't do that, it's wrong. So that's the moral theory of altruism. Maybe you recognize it. And this is where we start to get controversial, okay? Maybe you can feel the hairs starting to stand up on the back of your neck. You certainly will in a minute. Altruism is the morality that holds that the others are the proper beneficiary of moral action. So the standard of a good action is anything performed for the benefit of someone else, of non-self. And it's often misconstrued. It's very, very commonly misunderstood, altruism, to mean kindness, generosity, helpfulness, these sorts of things, being compassionate, considerate to others. It's none of these things, ladies and gentlemen. It's really important to grasp this because it's a moral duty. It's an obligation. There's no choice. If someone's got a gun at your head and tells you to give somebody £200, you're clearly not being generous. You're being obedient. Okay? So there has to be an element of volition in order for generosity, kindness, these things to have meaning. They have to be voluntary. Okay, we're coming back to this voluntarist idea, agorism. So it's very important to understand that the moral theory of altruism is a compulsion, it's a duty. So let's look at the political system that we do want. We want to be free. So what, in essence, is freedom? Well, freedom is essentially the ability to act on your own judgment, to self-determine, to be able to sort of leave the group and say, do you know what, I don't like your exploitative, corrupt system. I want to go over here with my friends and set up something different. That is freedom. Being able to act on your own judgment. It's a political condition in which you're left alone by everyone else. Nobody messes with you, takes your stuff, interferes with you. You're left alone. Okay, so this is where we want to get to. And the important thing to note about freedom is that it places an enormous burden of responsibility on the individual. There's no welfare state in a free world because no one else has had their money taken from them in order to fund your lifestyle. So it places this burden of responsibility on us. We have to be up together. We've got to be functional units. We've got to know what to do. And this relates back to my interest in finding a method to validate ideas, because the individual sovereign must have this ability to know what's going on, to build an accurate worldview. So what does the idea, we'll come back to personal sovereignty in a moment, but what does the idea of freedom essentially rest on? This is the issue. And it all comes down to an idea in a opposing ethical theory to altruism. And the idea is that you have the right to live for your own sake. That's what freedom rests on. Think about that. You have the right to live for your own sake. And that's the start of personal sovereignty, taking ownership of self. So this idea that you have the right to live for your own sake is the moral, or is the core presupposed idea in the ethical theory of egoism. Ooh, now we're going to talk about being egoistic. People are going to really wince. Egoism is the opposite of altruism. Altruism is otherism. Egoism is selfism, you could say. So it's the moral code, egoism is, that holds that the proper beneficiary of a moral action is oneself, not anyone else, oneself. Okay, that's the distinguishing difference. And this is essentially being concerned with your own self-interest, looking after yourself. But that is selfish. That's what it means to be selfish, to be concerned with your own self-interest. So, goodness me, we're starting to get controversial now. Who wants to be labeled as being selfish? Nobody. The point is, if we stop and think, is that selfishness is a massively misunderstood concept. Selfishness isn't barging in the queue. It's not sort of taking the last bit of cake or grabbing the best seat by the pool. That's not being selfish. That's just being an arse. That's looking at such a short-term interest at the huge price of your reputation, your standing in the eyes of others. It's not at all selfish to behave in any such manner. It's selfish to get up on time, to brush your teeth in the morning, to tend to your own personal hygiene. It's selfish to breathe. We have to remind ourselves what exactly selfish is. It's selfish to choose a wonderful partner. It's selfish to have a great career. It's selfish to want to be the best version of yourself that you possibly can be. That's perfectly beautiful selfishness. So we've got to challenge ourselves here with this moral code. So what we're talking about here is altruism, which the cultural current enormously sweeps us towards. I'm sure you'll all agree. Western culture is saturated with altruism, from the mainstream religions, of course, for a start. We got images of Mother Teresa as role models. working in soup kitchens and all these sorts of things. And it so saturates our culture, altruism, that most people consider being moral as being altruistic. I was raised a Catholic. I had it up to here with altruism. So we need to question these ideas and realize the bottom line here on this issue, and we've come to the second issue of the four. We've come down from politics into ethics, and we're identifying the central issue that leads to a politics of collectivism is altruism. That should really ring alarm bells, guys, because our culture's saturated with altruism. Is it a surprise that we're drifting with the cultural current towards collectivist tyranny? I suggest not. We have to grasp that it's the opposite theory of ethics. Egoism. Hasn't that had a bad rap? Nobody wants to be seen as being egoistic, but that actually is the moral code that can lead us not only to freedom, but as I said earlier, it's the beginning of personal sovereignty. I have the right to live for my own sake. When I'm ready and when I've created values, I will happily give and share with others, but I must, as a life-supporting prerequisite, focus on my own self-interest, first and foremost, as a priority. Makes sense. Anyone who's taken a flight has heard the safety briefing, where we're told that in the event of a decompression and the cabin decompresses, reach for your own mask first, put that on, of course, because you've only got seconds before you pass out. In that case, it's quite clear that's the thing to do, but it's also a principle that serves your life in general. So we've gone down into the ethical. We've looked at non-aggression principle in politics, in ethics, rational egoism. We have to put rational in front of that just to make it extra clear. And we need to go even deeper, because I've just said that personal sovereignty begins with recognizing that it's your life. You own it, okay? You own your body, you own your mind, you own the product of your effort. It's yours, your life. It is not a product, it's not owned by the group. It's really important to get that. So that's the basis of personal sovereignty. But also, the personally sovereign must be able to assemble a meaningfully accurate worldview. We need to know what's going on. Of course we do. We need to know how to do these permacultural growings. We need to know how to be healthy. We need to know how to build parallel networks outside of the system. So we need a means to confidently arrive at what we can claim as our knowledge. So we need, in our philosophical structure, politics, ethics, we need to go down into metaphysics and epistemology, because these two subjects form the basis of our worldview and essentially how we know anything. And again, we're going to notice that the cultural current sweeps us away from the conclusion that supports, or the idea that supports, the freedom that we want. So what's the basic issue in metaphysics? It's what's the nature of reality? Is it real? Is it independent of us? Is it an objective absolute? Or is it a creation of consciousness? Like, are we all living in the Matrix, in a computer simulated thing or something? That's the basic issue. Is it a creation of consciousness, or is it real and separate from us? Was it here first? And the basic issue over in epistemology is, should we use reason, our faculty of reason, as our means to acquire knowledge, or can we use some non-rational means? Can we use faith, emotions, hunches, gut feelings, all of these things, okay? That's the basic issue. So right off the bat, I want to say that on these two issues, and there's either way you can go on those, they are genuine dichotomies, by the way. Ethics is not. There's different forms of ethics, but these are genuine dichotomies. There is only one answer on those two issues that supports the outcome of human freedom and flourishment. And the first thing I want you to note is that all of our functional human actions in any day, anything you do, making a cup of tea, driving the car, all rests on the presupposition that reality is separate from us. It's an objective absolute. That's the mental presupposition that we're not even aware of, but it's there. And also the presupposition that your faculty of reason, using the method of logic, is your means of knowing stuff. Yeah, that's your means of functioning. So by way of illustrating that, let's just look at something really simple that we all do all the time, every day: walking through a door. So you walk up to the door. What are you presupposing? What are we demonstrating is going on? Implicitly, I hasten to add, we're not thinking these things, obviously, but it's an implicit component to our action. So we walk up to the door, we immediately grasp the identity of the door, and we distinguish it from the identity of a surrounding wall structure. We also simultaneously grasp that it's the door that we're going to go through, not the wall. So we've grasped causality. What a thing will do depends on what it is. We've also demonstrated that our consciousness is not sufficient on its own to change the identity of the door from being closed to open so we can go through, or to change the identity of our location from these coordinates to those coordinates. So we're demonstrating a recognition that action is required. And lastly, we're demonstrating the use of logic. We recognize that if we want to be in that room, we can't simultaneously not be in that room. So contradictions don't exist. So these 4 points all rest on and are components of or expressions of the fundamental presuppositions that reality is objective, it's separate from us, and that reason is our means to know it. Now, the second point to note, closely related, is that the concepts of truth and knowledge rest on this presupposition of an objective reality. Let's just illustrate that. Supposing I told you your car tire was flat, what would you do to check out my statement, to validate it? You'd probably go and look, you'd go and check your car. Meaning you'd go and consult reality. You'd go there, have a look at what actually is in reality, and you'd compare that against my statement. And if they match, my statement was true. So in other words, reality is our standard of truth. Yeah, it's the only possible standard of truth if you go away and think about this, ladies and gentlemen. So hence this presupposition that reality is an objective absolutely separate from us. It has to be for truth to have any meaning, and for knowledge to have any meaning. Knowledge properly pertains to all that is reality. If we imagine that reality is some movable flux, that different groups of people could have different knowledge and have different beliefs that made things change, then what does knowledge mean? It doesn't mean anything. That's the undermining of the concepts of truth and knowledge. So, excuse me while I just wet my whistle again. So the first thing to acknowledge here is there's scope for confusion, okay? There's huge scope for confusion. You've probably heard that every good lie has some truth in it. On the metaphysical issue, there's huge scope for confusion because, of course, we do create our experience of reality. Consciousness, we are creators, you know. Consciousness has a fantastic ability to create every aspect of our life experience almost. But there's a line where you can't cross, basically. You can't change the identity of something, can't change the identity of a chair into something else. With your consciousness alone, it requires action. So there's an enormous amount we can control. We can create everything. We have the ability to determine our degree of knowledge. We can determine how we conduct each other. We can choose partners and careers. Collectively, we can build towns and cities and environments, institutions and customs and things. We have an enormous creativity. We can even affect our physiology. We can worry ourselves sick. We can make ourselves better with a placebo. Consciousness can affect water. The work of Veda Austin and Masaru Emoto. Consciousness is an amazing thing that we don't yet fully understand. And we must explore all these things. We must find out more. But we mustn't jump to a conclusion and say, oh, well, therefore, thoughts create reality, if that undermines our basic presupposition on our human functionality. Should be a real warning sign there. So there's scope for confusion. And we haven't got time to thrash out all the details today, but this confusion is, of course, exploited by what I call the cultural undercurrent. We're very much encouraged towards one belief. And just a quick word about this, like any tyranny, any misleader, any dictator, or any political system which would exploit and enslave us wants to disrupt our means to knowledge. We've got to be a bunch of gibbering idiots to be easily led, okay? We want to be dumbed down. Most of us are familiar with the fact that the education system has been dumbed down. Well, I suggest to you through this talk on fundamental ideas that we've been philosophically lied to as well. There's this undercurrent that we don't think to question. Who thinks of questioning altruism and the nature of reality in these, with the implications? So it passes undetected. But the point is that it's very much in the interest of any would-be tyrants or any political system that will enslave us to undermine our concepts of truth and knowledge by changing our convictions on the fundamental metaphysical issue and changing our convictions on the fundamental epistemological issues. That's a very important point to bear in mind. On the philosophical side of it, the New Age movement and the law of attraction and scores of books and things have been advocating that we create our own reality in a metaphysical sense. They don't stop and say, oh, but there is a limit. You can't actually do this. You can't make water flow uphill. You can't stop magnetism or stop radiation from happening, the natural phenomena. There's no distinction made. People often refer to the double slit experiments. Well, there's the proof. There's the proof, people say, that contradictions do exist because light can be a wave and a particle. And also it's proof that thought creates reality, because when you observe the experiment, the wave of potential collapses into a particle of actuality. We've all heard this, but I suggest to you guys that this was the mainstream news of 100 years ago. These revised double slit experiments were performed about 100 years ago, and they were the mainstream news of the day. Just like we're dealing with pandemics and climate change now, that was what was being talked about then. We should apply the same degree of suspicion to all ideas, whether they're from this year, 10 years, or 500 years ago, should all be subject to our means of validation. So lastly on that point, mainstream philosophy has been dominated by idealism for about the last 250 years. And philosophy being the mother of all science, I strongly suggest that that was corrupted long before the mainstream media was corrupted. Think about it, guys. The philosophical ideas that come down from the establishment are not questioned as being manipulated, bought, influenced by powers that shouldn't be. I suggest perhaps they are. Mainstream philosophy has been saturated with this idea of idealism, that human thought creates reality, literally in a metaphysical sense, for quite some time. So there's confusion as well over in the epistemological issue. And it's very understandable. I mean, we've all had an experience where we've had a hunch, and we followed that hunch. We found out it's true. I'm sure everyone's had that. I've had that. We've had feelings that something is true, and it turns out to be true. So this is very, very understandable. But the point here, when we're talking about our means of knowing things, we're talking about what's the sanction of your convictions. What are the reasons that hold up your conclusion, that support it? And it's okay, and it's very valid, in fact, to follow a hunch. I always do. In my method of truth-seeking, I consider a hunch or an intuition as a lead. And like any investigator, I'm going to follow that lead. But I'm going to do that by asking questions and conducting a rational inquiry. I'm not just going to stop with my intuition and say, yeah, okay, well, that's it. I've got it. I know that now. Because you haven't got any reasons. And again, this confusion is exploited. Our culture, I suggest, is heavily saturated with the emotional over and above the rational. I always remember Star Trek, the 1960s sci-fi show, in which Captain James T. Kirk was the warm, emotional human, and First Officer Spock was the logical alien. There's a really powerful message in there. And we've got things like political correctness. Political correctness is a social manifestation of the elevation of the importance of emotions over clear, precise communication. We mustn't upset people's feelings as a priority. Of course, we don't want to upset anyone's feelings anyway, but the point is it's elevated observably above the need to just be clear and direct with our language. So the point there is that there's this cultural undercurrent that's trying to devalue reason as our means to knowledge. So I want to conclude by just looking a little bit at what I refer to as the epistemology of reason versus an epistemology of ultimately emotions. There's a big danger in the epistemology of emotions if we use that as the sanction of our convictions. And the thing about using an epistemology of reason is that you very literally have reasons. You ask why something is true and you find out why, the reason. And you have this structure to your knowledge where reasons or facts, remember we're acknowledging that facts, that reality is an objective absolute. And we're acknowledging that, and we have reasons to support our conclusions, which means we have understanding, we can communicate our ideas, we can extend our knowledge, we can correct our knowledge, we can communicate it. But over on the epistemology of emotion, no such possibility. If you just believe an idea, if you just know it, and you're happy with that, you have no understanding. Well, how do you know that's true? Well, I don't know. I don't know the reason. But I feel it. So you can't correct your claim of knowledge. I would suggest that isn't knowledge, it's a belief. But you can't correct it, you can't extend it, you can't explain to others. That's intellectual stagnation. Well, I'm going to hurry up and bring this to a quick conclusion. But one more important point to note, that in the epistemology of emotion, if you're focused on your emotions, if you're centered on them, if you're in your emotions, you're going to be really vulnerable to fear-based propaganda. And this is why it's so effective. The powers that shouldn't be know this. They want to undermine our means to knowledge. That's why they frighten us. But if we're thinking rationally and logical, and we're going by our critical faculty to know what's true, then we won't be fooled by logical fallacies. We won't be scared by fear-based propaganda. So it's very, very important. Anyhow, I'll leave that issue there. In a very quick summary, these three ideas that I've looked at, we briefly mentioned the non-aggression principle, which is recognizing reason, again, our means to deal with each other. We've looked at this ethics, the ethics of egoism. We've looked at the nature of reality and that we must hold as sacrosanct that it's objective. That's the basis of all our knowledge. And the issue in epistemology, what's our means to know? And reason must be the sanction of our convictions. And none of that, I hasten to add, is to take anything away from emotions. They're wonderful. I'm the weepiest guy in a sad movie, I can assure you. Emotions are fantastic. So hopefully this helps. Maybe I've challenged you, but let's think of the undercurrent, okay? Let's think of the ideas that are more fundamental than the mainstream news. Thank you very much for listening.
I'm going to be here this week, tomorrow, today, soon.
Yeah.
Okay, Nigel's going to be hanging out, so I encourage you to find him and ask him some questions, especially if you felt a little challenged by that. We're going to keep rolling, guys. We got 3 more speakers. We're about to hear from David Rodriguez. Somebody named Derrick Broze is going to be speaking, and then the lovely Neil Oliver is going to be closing us out. Who's looking forward to Neil Oliver? Anybody out there? Make some noise for Neil. All right, well, our next speaker here is a good friend of mine, and this is somebody that we did bring all the way from California. You guys heard that crazy state in the United States? You've heard a lot of crazy things about California, I'm sure, and they're all true. David is one of, I think, the most well-spoken and outspoken voices for liberty and for voluntarism. And Nigel just sort of touched on that, building on our theme here. I want to encourage you to stick around for this one. I know bathroom breaks and lots of stuff going on, but come back if you need to go take a quick break and listen to what David has to share, because he's an inspiring speaker. He's a motivating speaker. And without further ado, please welcome David Rodriguez to the stage.
Can you hear me? How many of you can feel the exciting energy of transformation in and around you right now? Yes? And how many of you would like to co-create the better, freer, more peaceful world for you and the children? Yes? All right. Great. That's what we're going to be talking about today. My name is David James Rodriguez. I'm so honored and excited to be with you because you guys are the chosen ones, if you guys haven't realized that yet. You guys are the visionaries on the earth. So it's going to be a very exciting talk. The title today is The Voluntary Way, a New Paradigm of Freedom. And by the end of today's talk, you will learn what is the voluntary way and why I believe it is the future of humanity. You're going to learn the new paradigm of freedom. You're going to learn how to transform fear into courage. I'm also going to tell you about a movie project that I'm working on, super excited about. And I'm going to share with you what I believe is the most important action you can take today and when you go home. Is this something you're interested in? Excellent. Before I share some of my content, I'd like to acknowledge everyone, but hold the applause, please. This type of event takes so much energy and, of course, money, but effort and heart. And it's very difficult. So I want to acknowledge the organizers, Derrick Broze, Astin-Gregory, the speakers, the sponsors, and just as important, you, the attendees. Can we get everyone a round of applause for making this thing happen together, please? Thank you. We are on the winning team. I want to remind you of this fact. I have a question for you. Is it ever okay to initiate violence against peaceful people? That's right. That's right. And the animals even know. This is natural law. And this is what they've been trying to suppress for hundreds and thousands of years. Why? Because the rulers are predators and they want to parasite on our energy, take our time and money, and they've been keeping these ideas suppressed. But they're going down, ladies and gentlemen, and no matter what they do, humanity will transcend. And so I want to share these ideas because when I learned these ideas, some of the things that Nigel mentioned, some of the other speakers, I got liberated, I got free, and I got so excited. So let me ask you this. How many of you guys own your body? That looks like 100% in the room. Everybody online as well. This is one of the most important ideas I've ever heard of because we were taught that we have to obey the government and participate in the government. But I don't know about my brothers and sisters here in England, but in the United States, there's a document called the Declaration of Independence. Anybody ever read this one? Anybody not? Great. Here's the essence of it. Where do your rights come from? God, source, nature. This is a secret because we were taught in schools. I went to public school. I'll tell you a little bit about myself in a second, but our rights come from the politicians. But this is just not the truth. And since we're going to spend a little bit of time together, look for my clock there. Is it okay if I tell you a little bit about myself? Thank you. I'm principal of a private school called Valor Academy. I do early high school graduations, apprenticeships, and homeschool consulting. I published a book by John Taylor Gatto, the world famous school teacher in New York. The book is titled The Underground History of American Education. And I'm also the co-creator of a movement called the Gatto Movement, which is an acronym for his name, which means get all the thinkers out of forced schooling. I sold my first business at age 26, and I'm working on this movie project right now I'm very excited about. And I love freedom. And so this is what we're doing here together today. Yeah, do you love freedom? Let's hear it. Let's get our energy up. Yeah, one of the secrets also is energy, right? These guys are printing money at the Federal Reserve and all these other banks, and we're slaving away trying to trade our time for money, and we forgot something. There's something more powerful than money. Any guesses? What's more powerful than money? Love, life. We got a rock star right here in the front row. Your life. Your life is the number one thing because you own yourself. So you're responsible for your life. And we're out here trading this precious slice of our life called time. And they have us pursuing something that these guys are printing at the printing press. Again, this is something that liberated me. And I want to tell you a quick story because I don't have any children yet, but I do have 2 nephews and a niece that I love. And one day we were at the lake and we rented a houseboat. And we also rented a jet ski. You guys have jet skis out here in England? Awesome. So my 6-year-old niece is sitting in front of me and we're riding on the jet ski and there's a boat that goes in front of us and we catch a little wake. And so we go off a little jump and she's 6 years old. So she turns around, she's smiling, the hair's in her face in the mist. And she says, "This is the best day of my life." When was the last time you said this is the best day of your life? I invite you to consider today's the best day of your life. Yes? Give it up for today. Enjoy your life today. Let's go. There is no tomorrow. There is no yesterday. It is now. It is present moment consciousness. And this is another secret, right? You're always in school trying to, get a diploma and then get a degree and then get retirement. And you can enjoy your life when you're 65. I don't think so. I think the secret is now. In Santa Cruz, California, I started a group a few years ago called the Santa Cruz Voluntarists because I was going to a freedom event in Mexico called the Narcopoco. And it's an annual event just like this. And I would come here, get excited for a week. And then I would go home and I'm like, where's my freedom friends, man? Where's the people that know about self-ownership? Where's the people that know about sovereignty? Oh, they're in Mexico. I got to wait a year. So I would save my money and get ready and go next year. And I said, I got to start something local. So we started this group in 2019. And then wouldn't you know it, in fall of 2019, the great pandemic hit. And so me and my buddies, about 15 of us got together. We said, hey, guys, I think we're in trouble. This is serious because I've been studying the vaccine movement since 2015 because in California, they mandate vaccines at kindergarten and 7th grade. And so I started an organization called the Education Options Expo, which is a YouTube channel. There's a great quote by Buckminster Fuller. He says, "You never change reality by fighting against it. You got to create a new model that makes the old model." See, this idea is rising. This idea is rising. So we got together and we said, what are we going to do? They say 2 weeks to flatten the curve. I just saw a documentary about Cambodia, and for them, this is the Khmer Rouge tyranny over there. They said, you're going to leave your house for 3 days, and then you can come back. They never came back for 5 years. So anytime these predators tell you something, understand they're lying through their teeth. Anyways, back to Santa Cruz. We got together. We said, what are we going to do? Well, free people know our rights come from God, source, nature. So we don't ask permission for freedom. We exercise our freedom. So, yeah, exercise our freedom. You guys like that? Come on, come on. So we went down to the beach, and I'm from a small town in Northern California. I love swimming on a hot day. That's one of my great pleasures of life. So we went down. There was like May 2020, and there's a sign. It's like a 12 p.m. on a Saturday. It's 80 degrees at a beach town. Sign closed, beach closed, 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. They're going to close nature? No. So we got together. What are we going to do? We're going to exercise our freedom. So about 12 of us got together, and we got the bullhorn, and we went down there on a Saturday, and we said, hey, we now declare the beach open. So 12 of us walk on the beach, and then little stormtroopers come with an old golf cart and their helmets, come over, and they're, hey, guys, you can't be on the beach out here. And so we would live stream like this and stay calm, stay honorable and respectful, and we say, is this your beach? No. Who does the beach belong to? The people. Excellent. We're one of the people. It's our beach. This happened multiple times. And one of the times was really powerful because we started doing beach bonfires on Saturday. And wouldn't you know, you're not allowed to be on the beach past 10:30, and you can't have any beers or alcoholic beverages. But we don't ask permission to be free. We exercise our freedom. So they come at about 10:30, and at that time, it was still about June 2020. There's about 15 of us, and we had some beers, and we had a bonfire. And but this group had been educated in self-ownership and personal responsibility, and government being illegitimate. And so we're having a bonfire, and they show up, and about 4 sheriffs and the guns and stuff like this. And They say, you guys can't be here doing this. And we all just stayed silent. They said, oh, who's going to take responsibility for the fire? Who's going to take responsibility for the beers? And all of us just sit there in silence like this, live streaming. And then I could feel the energy shift because they're used to walking up on people who don't know who they are. But our group, the voluntarists, we know exactly who we are. So we just stayed there in silence, and I could feel the energy because he said, oh, all you guys want to get a citation? Give us your ID. Do you think we gave them our identification? We did not. So they left us alone. And then they came back at 2 a.m. It was like 6 of us, and the same thing happened. And we didn't participate, and they left us alone. So that kept happening. We did 70 Saturday bonfires in a row. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then we created the energy just like this. This was our meeting. I would do meetings just like this. And we would remind people, hey, this is what we stand for. Personal responsibility, self-ownership, do no harm. I want to mention do no harm because one of your freedom heroes in this country is a gentleman by John Stuart Mill. He is very famous for no harm. So I want to talk about some of the principles as the previous speaker spoke about. This is a moral awakening that's happening. People are starting to understand righteousness and doing what's right. And as MLK said, it's always the right time to do the right thing. So have you ever heard of a guy named Lysander Spooner, Murray Rothbard, Ludwig von Mises, Samuel Konkin III? Okay, these are guys who have written books hundreds of years ago in Lysander Spooner's case, Rothbard 50 years ago. And so when I heard these ideas, I said, what is going on? Where have these ideas been? Well, you know what's happened? They've had a monopoly on the media, the education, and the corporate entertainment for so long, they've tried to put these ideas down. But Lysander Spooner proved in 1870 that the Constitution has no authority. And that was a big blow because I'm a big patriot from a small town and pledge allegiance to the flag. But it turns out your rights come from God or you, and you don't give them up unless you voluntarily assign them away. So the evolution of freedom, it went from the monarchy, which I know we're in a place with a king. I don't know if you guys like him or not. You guys like the king? Okay, I don't know. Somebody told me they're like celebrities out here, like in Brad Pitt in Hollywood or something. I don't want to defecate on your heroes. So a monarchy, the divine right of king, off with his head. And then King John in 1215 Magna Carta said, hey, we're the barons. We have some rights too. So, okay, now you guys have rights. And now we're evolving to voluntarism. I call it voluntary living, the voluntary way. What is the voluntary way? The voluntary way is I only participate in voluntary relationships, and I do not participate in coercive relationships. Voluntary way. It is the future. It is the idea that scares the panties off these predators, and they're not going to stop it. The previous speakers talked about the blockchain. I'm not a techno champion yet. I'm learning, but what an idea. You can put something on the record, and they can't delete it. That's pretty exciting, I got to say. You feel the energy? Hey, do me a favor. Look to your neighbor, left or right, and tell him, look at him, smile, say, we can figure this out. We can figure this out. We can figure this out. You know why? Because the human beings have been weaponized. Carl Jung said something great. He said, man is the great danger. We must study him. We know nothing about him. He also said for the first 40 years, we're doing research. So if you're 40, relax. You're just doing research. You got another 40 years here. The United States is the empire of the planet right now. And it's unacceptable and terrible what they're doing upon the planet. And people are saying, yeah, freedom and democracy, Iran, Afghanistan, all these things. Well, how about, you ever heard of something called democide? Anybody heard of democide? Anybody not heard of democide? Excellent. Democide is death by government. It is the largest threat to death in the 20th century. Over 100 million citizens, civilians, people have been killed by their own government. And we never heard about this idea. So now we know that government is organized crime, and anybody that uses coercion doesn't deserve our cooperation. And we learned this not just from these previous people I mentioned, but MLK, even Gandhi. You know, study these people. These guys realized that nonviolence is more powerful than violence. And even this thing, the camera, this thing is super powerful. So yes, in America, we have guns and ammunition and 3D printed guns as well. Great documentary called Death Athletic, which talks about 3D printed guns, milling your own guns. But who wants to kill somebody as a solution? Come on. Killing somebody, that's not a solution. But not participating with them is. Identifying the predators in our community, that's a solution. Because all of us are all peaceful people, yes? Yes, we only use violence or force to defend ourselves or our children or our loved ones. So if one coercive individual comes in here, some predator comes in here, we will stop him. We will identify him and we will ostracize him. And so this idea has to do with intentional neighborhoods. You've heard of intentional communities where everybody gets together, puts their money together and lives on a big piece of land. And, you know, I think some of these places, they work out there. But it turns out humans were kind of funny creatures. We like privacy, we like solitude, and we do want to get along with each other, but we don't want to be right next to each other all the time. I need to be by myself a little bit, you know? So intentional neighborhood is the concept that we'll be in the same vicinity, maybe 5 or 7 minutes with of each other. You got your 5 acres, I got my 5 acres, and everybody's got this, their independence. So we have this intentional neighborhood. Where did I get this idea? A guy in Kansas, Tag Meyer. He's been doing this for 7 years. He's got like 70 people in his immediate 10-minute radius. And when he had a fire on his homestead, he didn't call the government. He called his mutual aid group. He called it his MAG. Genius. So they show up on their ATVs with the water pump, straight out the fire. Problem solved. So this whole exit and build philosophy gives us a lot of hope, at least me. You guys love exit and build philosophy? Yeah. So when we're on the beach in Santa Cruz having these meetings, I call it the voluntary solutions meeting. Because during 2020, 2021, everybody's Bill Gates and Fauci and all this, you know, predators and stuff. And I'm like, dude, I'll give you 30 seconds to talk about your problem, but can we talk about some solutions, please? And then we started talking about exit and build because Derrick was talking about this at the time. I said, thank the Lord, somebody's talking about some solutions because that's a real solution. I'm tired of begging politicians for my freedoms, begging them for my rights. I like the idea of let's conduct voluntary relationships. I'm not going to harm you. You're not going to harm me. If someone does, we'll have a mediator and resolve the problem. We don't need this, these predators out here telling us what to do with our life. Yes? Good. Some people talk about the Great Awakening. I think that's true, but it's just a little bit too vague for me. I read a book called Conscious Language by Bob Tennyson Stevens. So I'm learning to be more specific and clear in my language. So I think the awakening is actually the great self-ownership awakening. I asked you about self-ownership because that idea was so liberating. And then more people are lost in the dark. They don't know who owns their body. You guys do because you're a visionary, pioneers. People know what's happening. But a lot of people, you ask that question and they're like, I don't know. Santa Cruz, we did 40 weeks of free hugs as well. So for 1 hour a week, because after a few months of sharing information, letting them know about the vaccines and all the stuff, we're like, man, people, they don't really respond to logic. They're not really interested in the facts. So 1 hour a week, we had signs and we had a band come with us and our friends, and it said free hugs. And it was really powerful because as a man, I don't know about the other men in the house, I didn't learn much about love growing up in my house. My father's Mexican, my mom's, white. And so Mexicans and men in general, we don't express our love. So when I would go see my cousins or like grandparents and stuff, they would say, I love you. And I would kind of feel weird saying, I love you back, because all I knew of love was romance or intimate relationships. But it turns out there's many types of love. The Greek had 8 types of love. There's family love, friendly love, self-love, and there's something called agape love. Agape is love of humanity. I just love being human. I just love you guys because you're my brothers and sisters in the same species, maybe individuations of the divine presence. Yeah, you're with me. Is that all right? So now I like to express love to people. And I don't want to regret my life saying I didn't express my love. So I say to all the people I feel affection with, because this is the day. And I mentioned my 6-year-old niece, this is the best day of my life. And I started becoming present because of birthdays and holidays and celebrations. And I'm like, how come I only get to celebrate my life one day a year, my birthday? So I think every day is my birthday. I wake up and say, thank you, God, for this life. Thank you, God, for this body. I'm grateful to be alive today, and try to express this joy. So anyways, we're giving out free hugs on the beach, free signs, and some people come out. You guys are giving out free hugs in a pandemic? Yeah, we're in a public area, and it's voluntary. And so he was a young guy, bless him, and I said, can I ask you a question? Yes. I said, who's responsible for your health? And he says, well, the government and me. I said, no, man. And another lady comes up, same thing. It's really dangerous what you guys are doing out here. I said, ma'am, can I ask you a question? I said, are you really afraid of a virus? She says, yeah. I says, maybe you should stay home. Just an idea. So I asked him about their personal responsibility. They don't even know. So this is why I'm taking a step back to realize, oh, we got to get back to personal responsibility. They don't even know this is your own hand. They think some guy in a building over there is responsible for their own health and wellness and livelihood. I'm like, we're in deep trouble. But I have good news also. Freedom always wins. Tyrants know that, because you can't go against nature forever. Eventually, the people rise up, the energy rises up, and we find solutions, and we exit and build, and we make them obsolete. And that's what's happening right now. This is the most exciting time to be alive in human history, because I know these guys are going down. I was raised thinking that the American dream was money. And I found out it's not even American, and it's not even money. It's the human dream, and the human dream is freedom. And we will have that, and we can have it now. Yes, they got to siphon our money and use terror and all these things to psychologically enslave us. But the good thing is the root word of government is gubernare mente, control of the mind. So what if they no longer control our minds? Are we enslaved or not? No. Bob Marley was right 40 years ago. Only you can emancipate yourself from mental slavery. And so there's 3 steps I want to share with you right now. It's called liberate, celebrate, and create. We must liberate ourselves from the idea that anybody has any authority over you at all unless you voluntarily consent. Then you celebrate that fact. You celebrate that fact that you are free now. Yes, they use terror to get our taxes. Yes, they use terror to take our kids away, whatever it is. But no, they are organized criminals, and you didn't consent to that. So you can see, yeah, let's go. Their mind control is that we have a righteous authority over you, and you never consented. And he said that feels a little bit off, and it is off. It's actually anti-truth. Is the biggest lie we can ever understand. So we celebrate, we're free. Tonight we're going to have an amazing concert. I'm so excited for Double FX, Presidents, 33, Vegan, maybe Elias Clay. And so we're going to celebrate tonight. And those of you that aren't here, I hope you come next time or come to the concert, wherever you are. But we must celebrate this fact that we are alive and that we are free and they are with each other now. In language, I also heard some stuff today and yesterday and for years. And it's really become apparent to me that the powers that exist, they're not elite. They are actually predator psychopaths who have lost their soul. So I don't call them elite. You know who I call elite? The people who practice compassion and patience and agape love and personal responsibility and morality and righteousness and all the good things. So we got to be more accurate in our language because that's part of the scam. Part of the scam is your vote matters in this election or with my purchases, with my attention, with my energy, with my words, because I believe voting is important, but I vote with my money. I vote with my energy, with my actions. And so they think, yes, because it's like a half truth, right? You know, your vote matters. It does, but is writing my name or someone's name on a piece of paper, put it in a box, is that how we're going to be free? Or like the Declaration of Independence, You write it on a piece of paper, you send it to the authorities, and you say, hey, we now declare we're free. We're not asking for permission. This is a permissionless right. And that's what some of the blockchain technology is about. It's very exciting. So in the school system, just so you know, the purpose of the government monopoly compulsory school system is to create obedient clerks, consumers, and soldiers. And that's by the research of John Taylor Gatto, Charlotte Iserbyt, Anthony Sutton. There's a lot of resources out there I invite you to go take a look at. But one of the secrets of the system is that they teach us to become your own jailer, your own prisoner guard. So that way, when you're out in your life and you want to do something that doesn't harm anybody, you still have the government or the people in your head say, you can't do that. I can't do that. I can't do that. I don't know what to do. Can I get permission to go to the bathroom? All right. So it's like, no, we got to break free of all that. Actually, you know who the real kings and queens are? It's you. You know who the real heroes are? Do me a favor. Let's do an affirmation right now. Please put your hand on your heart. Say, I'm the hero. I'm responsible. I'm an action taker. I'm the solution maker. I'm a visionary. I got this. Turn to your neighbor, give him a high five, and say, we got this. We got this. These are just some of my daily affirmations, guys. Yeah, because language language shapes our consciousness. When I interviewed Stevens, we were having basically a live workshop conversation on there. And there's a great quote that says, I'm not anti-war, but if you have a pro-peace rally, I'll be the first one there. Say, that sounds kind of picky. That sounds, you're being a little bit, too detailed oriented. Well, if I'm against war, what am I invoking in my language? War. If I'm pro-peace, what am I invoking in my language? Peace. That's what I stand for. I stand for peace. So in that, I created the language for myself so that I can be more expressive and courageous about it. So now, instead of using the non-aggression principle, which is true, and the self-defense principle, which is true, I put them below the higher one, which is respect for self-ownership. That is where I say, you own yourself, I own myself. We agree, yes? So the next principle is respect for self-ownership. So I respect yourself to do whatever you want as long as you don't harm anybody. So that way we stand for something. We stand for respecting the self-ownership of everyone else. Now, I want to let the people know, I don't make a call for the greater marketers on the planet. Dana White, Grant Cardone, Myron Golden, Tony Robbins, Russell Brunson, Joe Rogan, Russell Brand, Patrick Bet-Davies, Sean Ryan, and many more. These ideas of voluntary relationships will continue, and it is inevitable. I invite you to join us on this expression and creation of it all, because we want to be free and we want to protect the children. And some of you guys are still stuck in the left-right paradigm. You still think that Trump's going to save you or whatever it is, or the next guy. And so this evolution is the process of humanity being free. This idea of intentional neighborhoods, I think, is the future as well, where we have contracts with each other. We have agreements with each other. And it's kind of silly, but I think we're going to have actually individual contracts with our friends and family and say, hey, I promise not to use violence upon you. Do you promise not to use violence upon me? Yes. If we break that contract, I'll give you $1 million and you give $1 million. And then we're going to have like a network. And we'll say, how many contracts do you have? How many peace contracts do you have? Well, I got 500. Cool. I got 200. I got 20. Oh, you're almost there, man. Come on, you'll get there. And that way we have this agreement, some express agreement that we're not going to cause harm against people, because we've heard it for decades and generations. I'm just doing my job. Doing your job is not an excuse to initiate violence against peaceful people. And my invitation to all the people watching, people online or seeing this, if your job requires you to harm peaceful people, you got to quit. You must have something more than money. Yeah. And I want to share some. I got a few minutes left. Politics is downstream of culture. And we change culture with comedy, music, and film. And I'm working on this movie project I'm very excited about. If the project is queued up, We can set it up. Yeah, let's take a look here and then we'll wrap up.
Do you want to help make an anti-woke movie that attacks liberal hypocrisies? Are you tired of Hollywood's left-wing propaganda? Yes, so are we. That's why we're taking a stand.
In our world, conformity is the norm, but with the power of story, we can dare to break free. We're making a modern-day Romeo and Juliet film, where instead of the two being separated by their families, they're separated by their political ideologies. Woke liberals versus freedom-minded conservatives.
The name of the movie is Sacred Life. It is a heart-pounding thriller that reimagines the classic Romeo and Juliet tale for our times. While most of these crowd-funded projects are made by amateurs, our director is the real deal.
Renee Perez.
He's made 39 commercially released movies for distributors such as Sony and Universal Pictures, and for vendors like iTunes, Best Buy, Walmart, and Amazon. Unlike other crowd-funded films, this won't be an amateur production. This will be a commercial grade made by a professional with 20 years of experience. And here's a few clips from his previous movies.
This isn't just another movie. It's a bold statement about individual liberty and the power of voluntary association.
Featuring an anti-woke agenda, Sacred Life follows our hero as he navigates a government that has gained almost total control of the population.
We will introduce the concept of voluntary living, where individuals create intentional neighborhoods based on consent, mutual aid, and objective morality.
In an era of government tyranny and population reduction, a group of freedom seekers forged their own path.
We're not just making a movie. We're starting a movement for the future of humanity and freedom.
Watch as our characters build a thriving life outside of the corporate system, demonstrating real solutions like voluntary relationships, free markets, and growing food. It's an emerging concept that will be fully explained in the movie. But when love blossoms between two people from opposing worldviews, a conflict erupts.
Our talented cast and crew are ready to go. We just need your help to help us reach our goal of $350,000. In exchange, you will get some amazing perks for helping us produce this film.
Can our hero protect his community and his love while standing up against government overreach?
The fight's upon us, and I'm no soldier, but I do have the world's most powerful weapon, a camera, and I know how to use it. So who's with me?
This is your chance to be a part of something transformational. With your support, we can bring Sacred Life to screens everywhere.
Welcome to Sacred Life, where liberty meets love and individuals change the world.
Join us in reimagining what's possible for the human family.
We pitched the idea to some investors and they couldn't see the vision, so now we're going to the people. So we are taking interviews and podcasts. If you want to get us on your show, this guy, Renee Perez, is a really great dude. He's made over 30 movies in the last 6 or 7 years. Many of them were anti-woke, calling out crazy ideas like pro-strong male, pro-strong families, protecting the women and the children versus the woke mandates in Hollywood, which are against all these things, right? Which is going against nature. So he's been blacklisted in Hollywood. So we're like, hey, we're going to go directly to the people. I believe in the power of the people. If we find 3,000 people to give us $100, we'll make this film. So we're really putting it up to you guys if you guys have some interest in that. But this is how we change culture. You know, we're taking a crack at it. And this is how we're going to change the world, I believe. So it's going to be one song at a time, one movie at a time, one event at a time, and we just keep chopping away at this tree of tyranny until this thing crashes, until governments no longer have any mental legitimacy in the minds of people saying, yeah, that guy's legit. No, every time you see a government do something that you didn't consent to, that is organized crime, and that's illegitimate. And these ideas are not going to be suppressed any longer. I want to share a story that really inspired me. It's a true story from about 5 years ago. Did you guys hear about the Thai soccer team that got stuck in a cave? They made a movie about it. It's called 13 Lives. And I watched it, and it's about this group of, it was 12-year-olds with a coach, like 20 years old. They were playing soccer, and they decided to go in the caves in Thailand. They didn't realize it was the beginning of the monsoon season. So they went in there, and they got about 2.5 miles or 4 kilometers into the cave, and all the rains came. And they got stuck in the cave. So after they missed the birthday party and maybe a day passed, they started calling around, and then they went to the cave and they saw the 13 bikes right there out the cave, and they realized these guys were trapped in there. Long story short, international world community came around and they saved these guys by sending divers into the cave, swimming for miles. And then they figured out, how are we going to get the kids out? Because these guys, it's like a small little tube to get them out of the cave. They ended up putting some anesthetics in them to make them like asleep, pass out for like 2 hours as they pulled them out. They rescued all the 13 kids out of this cave. And there were some deaths from the volunteers, but when humanity is committed to rescuing children, when they're committed to being heroes and doing what's right, they do it. And so the block in people's mind is this idea of government legitimacy. It is not legitimate. So this is the phrase, this is the conversation that I think will continue for the next year, for the next decade, hopefully for 2 decades and 2 generations or more, so that never again will we submit ourselves and our energy and our time to governments that we don't even consent to. This idea is going away. So I just want to share that story because I was like, man, if they can do that for 13 million kids, can't we do that for 600 million kids that are stuck in the school system? Can't we do that for some of the people that are still in slavery now, you know, in places in Africa and other places around the world? Yes, we can. We can do that. We just got to focus and put our energy to that. Check my time here. We're running out of time. All right. I'm going to give you one joke and then wrap up here. I started doing stand-up comedy about a year ago because I'm like, how are we going to get these ideas out to the world, man? Like, logic don't work. So I started doing this, and I've been producing a couple comedy shows. So some people say, you know, they're afraid of the NWO. Not me. I'm afraid of the NWP, the negative, whiny people. You tell someone a goal or dream, they're like, nah, it's not going to do, it's not going to happen. It's like, dude, stay away from me, man. I want to get over here, okay? So put yourself around positive people. Put yourself who believe in you. And if it's not your family, your friends, then you got to exit and find new ones. Because I've been experiencing this too. You share a dream with somebody, you're excited about it, you give them a hope and a goal, and they're just like, burr, 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 going down. And, you know, we're sensitive, right? We're dealing with trauma and our own emotions and all these things. We need empowerment. So please consider doing that. And people also during the pandemic, they're like, hey, I appreciate what you're doing. You know, it's very courageous out there. You know, I got arrested multiple times. I've been to jail. One time I got arrested at a post office for not wearing a mask. And there's a sign on the wall that says, masks are recommended. So I went in there and the lady says, we're not going to serve you without a mask. Well, they ended up arresting me for trespassing in the post office. I sued them in federal court. They dismissed the federal case and they said, no, the post office is private property. They had probable cause and the police officers have qualified immunity. So I'm like, oh, okay. So that's not the way to save the world. But what I want to say is that they say, well, appreciate your courage. I said, you know what I had more fear of is not going to jail, but of looking in my kids' eyes and telling them I was afraid to stand up for what was right. So with this intergenerational idea, intergenerational freedom is the idea, the transfer of the idea of truth of self-ownership gets transferred to the next generation. So ladies and gentlemen, it's been an honor. Please check me out at davidjamesrodriguez.com, sacredlifemovie.com as well. And please continue the event. We'll see you at the concert. Peace and love upon you. We'll see you again. Thank you so much. Woo.
All right. Man, David always picks your spirits up, man. That's what it's all about. Bring it on to the next generation. Okay, group exercise. Please yell out something you love about the event. Go ahead, yell it out. The people. Come on. Energy, positivity. Me, thank you. The love. All of these reasons, right? We're all coming together in person. This is our first event we're doing in the UK. Reminder, we've been doing this for 4 years, and it feels really good to see it come together. And one of the important things is we want to keep this going. We don't want this to be our only time. We love Bath. We feel like this is a second home to us here. If you want to support this and make this to continue happening, please donate. If you go to the live stream page, thegreaterreset.org, you see there's a donate button at the bottom, and that will help us continue these efforts. And if you want to share it with your friends and family, please do that. And also a reminder, we're one of the first events that started publishing these talks for free. We didn't put it behind a paywall or take your email. We selflessly put it out there just so people would have the knowledge. So we were one of the first events to do that. And so follow us on Odyssey. We also have a Telegram channel. So please, that's some digital housekeeping. That's my job. I'm just gonna, yeah, keep the energy flowing. Also, the next People's Reset. You guys want to hear when that is? Yeah? All right, it's coming up pretty quickly. January 29th to February 2nd in Morelia, Mexico, which is traditionally where we've done the event. It's such a beautiful, it reminds me of Bath. It's pretty much Bath, but Mexican. Yeah, Mexican. It's such a beautiful place, amazing organic food, amazing people, and it's a lot cheaper. So it's going to be easy on your wallet. So get tickets now while they're on there. If you look at thegreaterreset.org, look in the event section, you'll see the People's Reset Mexico. And it's going to be a lovely time. I'm going to be there. Derrick's going to be there. All the amazing cast of characters. And we would love to see you in Mexico and have you there. I want to point out attention to the beautiful Myra. What are you working on over there? Yeah. So she is working on an unreleased piece. It is an album cover for a song that is going to be released today. And I hear the artists are in the building. I think they're just chilling. There it is. 33 in presence. I heard the song. It's a banger. You are not going to want to miss it. And so Myra is painting the album cover for that. I've seen her do a hummingbird mural on a wall in Mexico, like overnight. And it's a joke. She always does her best work under pressure. So she's going to get this done. And I think we're going to auction it off. Would anyone like to bid for this piece? Yeah? I'm feeling it. She also has prints upstairs at the Conscious Resistance table. So please check that out. And I'm really excited for the concert tonight to hear that next song. All right. So I have the honor of introducing a longtime friend, Derrick. And I've known Derrick since 2019. The first time I started paying attention to him, there was lockdowns in the city I was living in. And it was like, we were literally thought that the police would come in and kick the door and be like, "Are you vaccinated?" And we were kind of feeling the fear. And then I remember watching one of Derrick's YouTube's videos, and he was in Puerto Vallarta at the time. And he was like, "Yeah, you know, there's no pandemic here. People are walking around, moving about their lives." And it clicked for me that you can live your life a different way. You don't just have to go along with everything. And that was the start to something beautiful. What I love about Derrick is he is one of the greatest speakers of our time. I mean, just experiencing the energy in his talks and reading his journalism. He's very, very gifted, but he doesn't stop there. All of these ideas he's talking about, I've seen him live it. I've been on tour country with him. We've done this event 4 or 5 times. I've really seen it. Anything he can do to further the freedom of humanity, he does do. And it's an incredibly taxing job, but he takes it on his shoulders. He's not doing it for the money. And that's why, you know, I don't think we should put our faith in leaders, but as far as leaders go, he's a pretty damn good one. So please give it up for Derrick Broze.
How's everybody feeling? No? Cool. I'm feeling good. All right, so I've got about 45 minutes with you. We might make that a little shorter so we stay on track. But let's breathe together first. I know you guys breathed earlier. Hakeem had y'all move around, but I like to center myself because if you've heard me speak before, sometimes once I get going, I talk fast and things happen fast up here. So it helps me to center and breathe. So let's take a nice deep breath together. All right, so my talk today is about the concept of exit and build. Who was in my workshop yesterday? We had a good crowd in there. So some of what you heard me talk about yesterday will be familiar, and we're going to go a little further, hopefully. I'm going to explain what the concept of exit and build. You probably heard people mention that phrase a few times today, and where it comes from. We're going to talk about how to apply that holistically, and then I'm going to speak more specifically about my life and how I incorporate these ideas. My talk, I think we went with something like my exit and build journey from something to abundance. And I'm basically going to share just, I'm not a rich or a wealthy guy, but I definitely have been able to elevate my living standard. Not only I'd say monetarily, financially, but more importantly, spiritually, morally, ethically, and just being surrounded by all kinds of amazing people. And that isn't where I've necessarily come from. I've started out as pretty much just a broke, starving activist. Anybody ever been that? You're just so passionate, but you don't know how you're going to make it work, but you just know you care enough that you have to go do something. And I did that for a few years. And then I've been able to thankfully find a path for myself with journalism and with organizing events like this that has allowed me to really live the life that I want. And as Hakeem was mentioning, trying to be an example for other people. I shared this in my workshop yesterday, that I think the best way that we can teach when it comes to anything is to lead by example. Right? It's one thing for somebody to talk a lot about certain things. Like, for example, have you ever had an experience where maybe you look up to somebody, whether it's about everything we're talking about here, or maybe it's about anything, just any sort of person that you might kind of put on a pedestal, and then you meet them in person and they don't actually live up to the things that they've been talking about or putting online. Has anybody ever had that experience? I actually had that experience a lot with many activists that I was inspired by when I started out. And then once we became friends, I realized oh, okay, there's a different side of what you put out publicly. And so I, of course, am not a perfect person. None of us are, but I definitely try to live as close in line with the values and things that I talk about, not just preach about them on the internet and then do the opposite, in my real life. So I think that is really the best way we can do anything, is just you show people by action, especially when we're talking about the sort of things that we're talking about here, which is sort of new for a lot of people. I mean, Dan and I talked about this, that if we wanted to have this entire room filled with the 400 people that it can hold, or maybe even more, we could have invited all the COVID doctors and all the people you've seen online over the last couple of years. And nothing against any of those people, but we're ready to focus on the solutions, not just keep talking about the problems forever. Anybody else interested in solutions? I'm assuming that's why you're here, right? Because there's 10,000 YouTube channels out right now that we could all pull up that are going to tell us how bad the world is and rehash COVID and this and that. And again, we shouldn't forget what happened. We should never forget what happened. In fact, we can hope and work towards accountability. But my point is, there are some people who seem to be kind of stuck in that phase of our experience in COVID 1984. And I think it's because it was a traumatic thing for many people. Anybody lost family, friends? And I don't even mean to COVID. I mean, like, people who turned their back on you because you didn't want to get a shot or something like that, or, things. So it was a very traumatic time, and I totally get that. But when you're trying to do something new, it seems like it's sort of hard for people to understand. Like, we're not saying, let's keep talking about the problems. We're not saying, let's vote for the politicians and put our faith in this prime minister or this president or whatever. We're saying, how about we leave all that behind and build something new? And for some people, they can't even fathom, what does that mean? What does that look like? Well, we have to show them, and we have to build it. And that's the other thing, is for me, it's kind of exciting. Like, the idea that we, and I say we to everybody who's watching at home and those who are going to listen to this later and everybody in this room, that we collectively get to be the people to build whatever comes next. And I find that to be very exciting. I find it to be challenging and sometimes overwhelming, but also to be excited about it. I say this a lot in my talks, that I have 6 beautiful nieces and nephews that are really just, they're my entire world. And I don't have any of my own kids yet, but every time I see them, I think about how important this is. I see Dan's beautiful son. I see Dan's beautiful son and see that that's what we're fighting for. We have a range of ages in here, but we have, I'm 39. I know we have people older than me, a few younger. So some of us have kind of already lived maybe half of our lives or the majority of our lives. So it's not necessarily just about us. Of course, we want to be free and we want to have good lives, but it's really about the people coming after us, right? And that's my motivation. That's the reason I put so much energy. Whenever I meet people, they ask me, do you ever sleep? Because, we stay pretty busy with this work, and I do sleep. But I feel like my fuel is all the conversations I have with you guys. So many of you beautiful people come up to me and you say something like, hey, your book helped me in this way, or this talk you did, or thank you for this event. Or the speakers come up and share really great things. And that, when I'm at home and I'm feeling alone or I'm just at my desk, that's my fuel to just keep going. Because I know that there's so many of us all around the world who are trying to work on these solutions and who are looking for a little bit of hope sometimes, right? Sometimes you just need that little bit of fuel to keep going, just to make it to the next day. And that is what motivates me. That's what pushes me. So I'm going to share more about that, just kind of my personal journey and how I took myself from being really, just like I said, that kind of starving, broke activist who knew that my heart was in the right place, but I didn't quite know how I was going to survive doing these things, especially once I realized that, and don't tell anybody this, that I was never going to pay taxes again, because I couldn't fund, and I never did, actually. Thankfully, I never started. Hopefully this doesn't reach certain people, but I think I pretty much feel protected and safe. I don't know if you guys heard, we had an adventure at the airport on the way here, and it was fun. And you know, I'm traveling with my family, and please give a round of applause to my mother and my stepfather right here up front. It really, honestly, I'll just speak about that real briefly, that it wasn't a fun experience. You know, we got hassled at Heathrow Airport for 4.5 hours. They separated all of us. They start pulling out our cards. How much money do you have on this card? How much money do you have on this card? Who paid for the flights? What's the People's Reset about? Are you a sovereign citizen? They're asking me about my journalism, reporting on pedophilia within government. Are you one of the people who think pedophiles run the government? What's the pyramid of power? You know, all sorts of what I consider to be super invasive stuff and none of their business, frankly. And that's not something that's new to me. You know, it's not something I've never experienced before, but to have it happen when I'm with my family it really sucks. Like, that's not something I ever want them to experience, or Miriam or her sister. It's a stressful situation. So I feel like I can take those things. I can take the bullets and, you know, the arrows. I've been through it before. I've been hassled by all kinds of fun people over the years, and it might happen again in the future. But nevertheless, I think we did exactly what we should do. The reason we were stopped is because we opted out of the facial recognition, which is very quickly expanding in your country, here, across Europe. As I'm sure you guys know, by November 10th, you have to have digital ID, digital passport to enter the European Union. So I'm sorry to my friends in the European Union. I probably won't see you after November 10th because I don't think I know I'm never going to comply with those things. And I hope that you guys continue to fight and push back and find ways around that. So to me, to have that experience happen on the way to the People's Reset, where we're here to talk about solutions, it was just perfectly symbolic of why we're doing this, you know, because nobody should be targeted, harassed, simply because they say, no, thank you, I don't want to comply to that. And right now, thankfully, we have the option to say that. But the way things are going, that option won't be there so long. So that's why we're talking about, how do we build parallel systems? How are we going to travel? How are we going to exchange goods and live our lives in a free way when we know these systems are coming, right? And that's where we talk about exit and build. But it's been a journey to get to this point. I guess I'll start with my story a little, and then we'll get into exit and build and holistic activism. And then if you guys are cool with it, I'll probably share a song during my talk, if that's okay with you guys. And then give you a little preview of the concert tonight. Encourage you to stick around. So again, I'm Derrick Broze. I've been doing this for 15 years. I'm based in Houston, Texas originally. I've been living in Mexico for the last 4 years. In 2009, I just started having my awakening journey, as some people say. I read some books, watched some documentaries, and within the span of a week, my entire world was changed. I realized I can't trust governments. I can't trust any of these officials, these authorities that we're told that we should be looking up to. And I never really did. As a young person, I was always sort of, I think, rebellious, kind of anti-authority, not in any sort of philosophical sense, like we've heard from Nigel and David, and voluntarism, all these ideas that I understood now. I just knew I don't trust authority. They just seem like they're not worthy of trusting. But when I got out, after I went to prison at a young age, and I started to wake up, I started to see, okay, the entire world around me is mostly a lie. I mean, and I've learned more and more about that, whether you're talking about history, you're talking about science, you're talking about so much of what we're taught at a young age, that what we're propagandized in the mainstream education system is not about building us up into beautiful, free-thinking, critical thinking people. It's about making us worker bees who are obedient and follow orders and just, you know, get in that rat race of just trying to survive, right? I just got to get to 60, 65, 70, and I'll be able to retire and then enjoy my life then. And that it just none of it ever made sense to me. So whenever I started to have my awakening, I felt like I finally was really starting to understand the world around me. And, you know, I don't know about you guys, but whenever I first woke up, I thought, okay, all I need to do is share this information with people and everybody's going to get it. Like, that's it, right? They just haven't heard about this. And then I started going to friends, and after driving everybody around me crazy, including most of my family, I had 2 friends who understood what I was talking about. And we started an activist group, and that activist group became a big part of my life. And for 8 years, I was involved in the Houston Freethinkers. We had activist houses where I would live in with a couple other guys. We'd host documentary screenings, potluck dinners. We'd do protests and marches and rallies. We did skill shares, teaching people how to make their own soap, how to bake their own bread, how to, you know, not tie knots, just anything that we could do in the community. It was always very local, because I realized really quickly on that while the problems are massive and worldwide, like we talked about a little bit yesterday, how the United Nations has just signed the Pact for the Future, and you know, we know the World Economic Forum's work up to all kinds of fun stuff. The problems are huge and they're international, but the solutions are absolutely in your backyard. They're in your local community. And this is something I just really, really want to emphasize, because each of us are coming from different places. But if we take the solutions that we've been hearing this weekend and that we're going to hear tomorrow, and we actually go home activated and we implement them and we connect with other people in our local areas, we will create a better world. But if we're only focused on the big picture and we keep ignoring what's going on in our own backyard, it's going to advance, you know, because the UN can make some sort of demand or edict, and that's great, but they really don't have any power. The way it happens is some local politician in your community says, all right, I'm going to follow that UN agenda and I'm going to implement a 15-minute city on my local level, or I'm going to implement a mask mandate or a shot mandate, right? That's where we actually have the power to push back and to organize, whether that's, you know, if you choose to get involved politically, I don't think it's the best use of your time. But if you do, locally is the way to go. And I mean like super local, like your school board where your kids are going to school, get involved there, town council, city council. Even if you're not trying to run for office, but being there, showing up, being a voice. Has anybody ever gone to any of those places and expressed yourself and stood up? And good, raise, you know, give a round of applause for people who are actually speaking up in their local communities. And you know, in my experience, those things are always at a super inconvenient time when most people are working. In the middle of the day, in the afternoon, you got to sit there and wait a couple hours to get 2 minutes to speak or 3 minutes to speak. And I think that's all by design, of course. They don't want it to be convenient for us to be able to come and express ourselves to the people who are pushing tyranny in our backyards. So I focused very heavily for the first 10 years of my work, and I still try to this day, on what I could do in my own backyard. And we had a lot of successes. We were able to get on the local media plenty of times. They wrote lovely articles about us, calling us local group of conspiracy theorists. And it was, you know, they put up articles about me whenever I got arrested for the cops pulling a shotgun on us, and they said it was my fault, and all kinds of fun things. But over those years, I realized the media is not doing their job. And I started to think, maybe I can do it better. I didn't go to school for journalism, but I have a knack for investigation. And I realized that, you know, I have a mind that likes to think, and I think I'm a pretty intelligent person. So I started just picking up a camera. I started going to press conferences. I was and especially at that time, you know, I come from kind of a punk background. So I'm showing up all tattooed and, you know, ratty clothes with a little camera. And there's all these big local news there, and everybody's looking at me like I'm in the wrong place. But sure enough, I would be the only person there asking a tough question. I very quickly realized, oh, so they get invited back because all they do is throw softballs to the mayor and to the police chief. And as long as you do that, you're welcome back every time. The very first time I ever attended a Houston Police Department press conference, went all the way up to like the 15th floor. And again, I'm just looking around like my little camera. And I asked a question about this surveillance equipment they're trying to purchase. And he lied to my face, even though I had the contracts. And I put a video up saying Houston Police Chief lies about surveillance. They had a press conference the next day. I also came back, and at that press conference, I was asked to stay after class by the chief's liaison officer, and he said, "You know, Derrick, you're welcome to keep coming back as long as you're a good journalist, as long as you're a respectable journalist, a credible journalist." He's like, "I saw your YouTube video there, and you said that the chief lied about this, but technically he didn't confirm or deny it." And I told him, I said, "Look, I understand what you're doing. This is your job. My job, even as an independent journalist, is to hold you accountable. So when I know you're lying, I'm not going to play that game and say, oh, the chief did not confirm or deny. I'm going to say it's a lie, because what it is, it's a lie." They would prefer people to use euphemisms instead of speak truth. And that's part of the deception. They like to use these fake words to get it. Like, for example, in the US, they don't like to admit that they torture people. They call it enhanced interrogation, things like that. But that really masks, like, I think on a fundamental level, the truth of what we're dealing with. You know, so non-confirm, a lie is a non-confirm or deny. Torture is enhanced interrogation. we don't need to play those games. We need to use the real words. So I saw very quickly, okay, doing that job is going to be difficult if I choose to, really go the path that I've been on. But it's something that I love. I get so excited confronting politicians. It gets me. Some people like to jump out of planes and skydive. I like to go chase politicians around. And it's a fun thing to me. In the last year, I've confronted Tulsi Gabbard, Peter Hotez, anybody know Peter Hotez? You guys probably know him over here. He's the huge propagandist for the shots. I got to confront him 3 times in the last year. It's a fun thing for me. That's how I spend my weekends. But I think it's important work, right? So that my activism led into journalism, and I've been blessed and able to do this now. I write for The Last American Vagabond. Anybody familiar with Ryan, The Last American Vagabond? Awesome. If not, check him out. He's been doing great work and continues to. So I'm able to sustain myself, writing weekly articles, doing video reports. And I never thought that would happen. It wasn't my plan in the beginning when I first woke up, like, okay, I'm going to start blogging. Then one day somebody's going to pay me. It was just coming from like this fire burning inside of me that like, I can't just keep, like, it wasn't enough to know, okay, now I know the world's crazy. Now let's just go about my life and, ignore that. I just felt like I need to do something. And that something was, okay, I'm going to start a blog. I'm going to start an activist group. Okay, I'm going to start confronting people. Okay, I'm going to start writing articles. And it just kept evolving. It kept evolving. And then we started organizing events in Houston. And then we started organizing events in Texas. And now we're organizing events in Mexico, Texas, and the UK. And it's just growing and growing. And to me, I feel blessed every single day that this is the life that I get to live and be a part of. It's a massive honor that I get to come connect with people like you guys and bring my family and friends and meet people all over the world. And together we get to build that beautiful world. Because again, back to my nieces and nephews, they have no idea. They don't really understand what Uncle Derrick does yet. When they get a little older, I'm going to introduce them into this world. I want to bring them to these events and show them. Right now, they just know that I'm their fun uncle that comes around and we play and we have a lot of time. And every now and then I just say, you're so beautiful. Don't ever forget that. Just like planting all these seeds, just trying to help them, just see how powerful they potentially can be. Because as I mentioned yesterday during my workshop, we all know how much propaganda there is out right now for the children. Like, I think probably more than there ever was. I know there was propaganda in schools when I was in school, but now it's things about gender and sex and this and that. And it's so much and it's a lot. And my brother and sister, they're full-time parents and working. They don't necessarily have the time to, be involved every single day of every moment. Neither do I. But when I come around, I want to make sure that they always feel loved. They always feel welcomed. And they know that you can't necessarily trust what everybody out there says. That was some of the first seeds I started planting in my younger brother. He's 13 years younger than me. When he was 7 or 8, I started talking about the New World Order. I didn't say it in those terms, but I was just like, Dylan, as you get older, you're going to start to understand that just because someone's a teacher, a pastor, politician, doesn't mean they know what's going on. Don't just put your blind faith in them. Don't put your blind trust in them. And now he's just turned 27. He comes to some of our events and, he'll message me sometimes and say like, oh, look, I saw this thing. And he's told me recently, he's like, I remember those things you were telling me, and they're still with him, right? So there's a power in us planting seeds in the minds around us. And you don't have to be aggressive about it. It's just about connecting with people on a real human level. So my journey was very much just activism, then journalism, and now getting to do these lovely events. But I mentioned briefly earlier, I went to prison when I was 20 years old. That, I think, was my real awakening. Everything I just described was kind of my political awakening, waking up to conspiracies and what the government's up to. But it took for me to go to, getting locked up for small things and eventually being locked up for a year and then getting out, going back for 3 more months, getting out, going back. In the end, I did 19 months between county jail and state prison and all kinds of other treatment centers in Texas. I got arrested the week before I turned 21. And I got out for the final time, October 2008, when I was just about to turn 23. And in that 3-year period, I learned so much about myself because, it's one thing we face challenges every day out here in the free world, as they call it when you're behind bars. You can call this place the free world. Maybe we should call it the free-ish world. But when you're in there, this place feels very free. When you're out here, when you're facing all the challenges, yeah, life's hard. You have breakups, you've got job challenges, but you can still sit down and, go to the bathroom in your own time and have privacy. You can still be around your loved ones, but imagine just being in a place and it's like these 4 walls here. And no matter how much you cry, no matter how much you're angry, no matter how much you complain or get on the phone and call mom, dad, husband, wife, lawyer, whatever, you're not going anywhere until these people say you can. And that is a very powerless feeling, or it can be, but that's where I found my true power. Whenever I accepted that, because at first it's this sort of situation where you don't want to let go of the outside world. You're like, no, I what's my friends up to? What's my girlfriend up to? I don't want to be here. I hate this place because it's a horrible place filled with fear and racism and just anger and all this kind of stuff. And I was holding on to the outside, but in reality, eventually you have to let go and be present, right? And this is where I started really learning about being present, doing meditation. I had to let go of what was going on there and be in the space I was, as horrible as it was. And that is when my healing really began, because I started journaling every day. I started meditating. What's that? 5 minutes? I don't think I've been on for how long have I been on? 10 minutes? 15? Feels like I don't think it's been, has it been 45 minutes already? No, it definitely hasn't been 45 minutes. I saw the clock just go from 30 to 5 minutes just a second ago. Oh, it is exciting. All right. Well, I'm going to continue with the time that was on there before. So yeah, what I was getting at is being locked up. It was really the first time that I had to sink in and find my power and get present in where I really was. And thankfully, I had my grandmother at the time that started to send me books on prayer, on meditation. And that was when I first started meditating. I never meditated before that. It was in that space. And I remember being on my little bunk in prison, and okay, I'm going to get in lotus position, whatever, trying to sit here. And I hear people whispering, like, what the fuck's that guy doing over there? Like, just this. And, I just have to, like, all right, just ignore it. Just like, because this is for me, right? I don't care about these people. I got to get my healing, because I come from a family of, my father was in and out of prison my entire life for his drug addiction. There's drug and alcohol addiction on both sides of my family. It was something I grew up around and witnessed, my uncles and other people. And I just knew enough to know this is not what I want for my life. So I need to figure out how to do something better. And so long story short, that was my real first awakening. I got out 2008. And like I said, about a year later, watched a documentary, read a book, etc. And I woke up to conspiracies. But in reality, that was that first experience. And so that's why my work is called The Conscious Resistance. I talk about bringing together the spiritual, internal realm, healing our trauma, because I don't care who you are, how big or famous you are on the internet. Everybody's got doubts, fears, and insecurities. They all show up in different ways. What could be extremely paralyzing for one person on one hand can be nothing to another person, right? So it's different for each of us based on our environment, our upbringing, and our experience. And I had to do a lot of that work. And that work continues, of course. I'm not here to say like I'm perfectly healed and everything's fine. But that was the beginning of that journey. And so after I got into the activism, after a couple of years I was kind of living these double lives. I had my activist friends and I had my spiritual friends. We'd go to meditations, and then I'd go to protests and rallies and marches and all that stuff. But they were two different worlds, because my friends who were in activism had no interest in spirituality. Most of them were just like, what are you talking about, you weird hippie? And then my spiritual friends, we would go to our meditations and our consciousness circles. And every time I would try to bring up some, controversy, some latest police shooting, or the government's trying to pass this law or whatever, they would say, don't talk about it. Only good vibes here. Put your hand there, cover their eyes, close their ears. And it was a problem I had. But for the first couple of years, I just kind of like, all right, I guess I have these friends and I have these friends. But in 2013, after a couple of years of doing that, I had one of those nights where you're up just watching YouTube till 4 a.m, you just like can't stop. And this phrase, the conscious resistance, was kind of whispered to me. And that's why I launched the website. It's the name of my book series upstairs. And I guess sort of the movement, if you will, the idea of bringing together these worlds of spiritual and the physical realm. Yes, there are corporations and governments and people that we can name and institutions that we can say these people are doing bad things, but that's not the end of the picture. Some people, they get stuck in that realm, and then they're totally kind of absent-minded when it comes to this. This is the internal tyrant, the doubts, fears, insecurities, and limiting beliefs that can actually hold you back and prevent you from being the best person that you are capable of being. And I don't know about you guys, but it feels like we need the best versions of ourselves right now. We need everybody to step up and be that best version, be an example to the people in your lives, to your friends and family, to your colleagues, etc., so we can set that right example for other people to come forward. So I say all that to say that that's really what my message is about, is bridging that, kind of internal awakening with the external. And I think especially anybody who's at home, I've seen some of your comments. Somebody earlier on the comments was watching and he said, so what, we're going to do yoga and defeat the New World Order? Yes. That not only alone, because this is my problem, like we can't meditate our problems away and we can't pray them away, but that's part of the solution, Because if you're only doing the rally and the marching and like going and fighting out there, but you have nothing on the other side, I think you're missing part of the puzzle. To me, it's not one or the other. These are, and I'm not here to tell you what modality, religion, spirituality, that's your choice. I'm just saying we definitely do have this internal world that's important as well as the external world. Does that make sense to you guys? Absolutely. Cool. All right. So that thing says I have 20 seconds, but I know that's totally wrong. So I'm just going to keep going. Neil, we're going to just keep rolling and we'll bring you on afterwards. All right. I'm going to say I've got 15, 20 minutes at most. It definitely said more than that. Okay. So let's get it more into the details. I kind of shared now about, let's talk about what holistic means. Does anybody have definitions for that? Shout it out. What does that word mean to you? Fully encompassing, all encompassing, anybody? Bringing in all levels of being. Comprehensive, absolutely. Great. So yeah, that's exactly right. Holistic is this word. I was saying this yesterday, that you can go to like the supermarket and you're going to find holistic dog food. You're going to find holistic, whatever. It's kind of like a marketing thing now. People know like you can just throw holistic on any product and people are like, oh, holistic. Okay, well, I'll take that one. And it doesn't necessarily have to mean anything, but there is an actual definition. It does have meaning. It means dealing in whole systems. So for example, like let's say you're an environmental scientist and you're studying the planet. If you are looking at, like, say, the waters, the rivers, the lakes, that's one element, and you can study that, and you're going to get data from that, and that'll give you a certain perspective. But from a holistic perspective, you would look at all the different systems. And when you look at it from a holistic perspective, you don't just zero in on one piece of data, one piece of information, but you look at it from the broader perspective. It's going to give you a different view, a different analysis of whatever you're studying. And so for me, I talk about holistic activism, or as an anarchist or a voluntarist, I talk about holistic voluntarism. And all that simply means, again, that if our activism is just focused on they're bad, they're the bad people, they're doing everything wrong. And, you know, it's kind of a cliche. You guys may have heard when you point your finger that way, you've also got like 3 fingers pointing back to you. Sometimes people forget about that. You're pointing there, but don't forget about the role you're playing. You're like, the banks are bad, but I'm going to keep putting my money in their banks. I'm going to, you know, there's this disconnect sometimes between the things that we're angry at and what we're actually doing. And ultimately, I believe we have to take personal responsibility for our actions if we're ever going to create a better world. That's pretty much what this entire afternoon theme has been about, is that yes, there are bad people with bad philosophies and bad ideas that are trying to limit our freedoms, limit our privacy, and harm us. And ultimately, just not to bring the mood down, but for those who have gone deeper down the rabbit hole, this is a population reduction philosophy. These people are eugenicists. They actually would like to eliminate part of the world because they see us as useless eaters. I don't think that's true. I think we all have different gifts to offer, different skills to offer, and that's no matter what color of skin, background, nationality you are, we all have different gifts to bring to the planet. And so, but we do have to take personal responsibility for our actions. You know, we can't just say the other side is bad while we continue to support and use their systems. That's why today is all about building parallel systems outside of that. So I like to think in holistic terms. And when it comes to this idea of exit and build, it's from my book called How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State, which you can find upstairs at my table. It's also available to download for free, theconsciousresistance.com/how-to. theconsciousresistance.com/how-to. There's also a free audiobook. It's available in Spanish, German, French, and Japanese is coming soon. And I wrote this book in 2020, right before COVID happened. I published it in 2020, wrote it in 2019. We wrote an updated version in 2022, sort of a post-COVID version about everything we learned from lockdowns, travel restrictions, mandates, etc. And in that book, I talk about this idea of exiting and building. It's essentially this agorist philosophy we've been talking about this afternoon, and it plays in perfectly with the technology. We had Rose earlier speaking about DarkFi, and they're trying to build alternatives to the internet. That's the same thing. We want to exit from slavery systems, from systems that are going to lead to less privacy and less freedom in the long term. Exit from them, whether that means physically, morally, taking your money away from them, and build new systems and or support those who are building those new systems. I touched on this a bit ago as well. There's all kinds of amazing technologists discussing their tools earlier. I don't know how to build any of that. I don't know how to do any of that, but I definitely want to give them a stage to speak about it, to share it with the world, and hopefully get those projects funded and hopefully get more of you guys involved in that, right? That's the whole exit and build philosophy and strategy. Let's take our money, our time, our energy, our spirit away from these dead-end slavery systems, and I think politics is one of those, and let's put our energy into building new systems and focus on that for the coming generations, most importantly. So that's exit and build, and that's really what my work focused on. Thank you. I think that's the fundamental message of this entire activation. That's why we're trying to do this. We're not here to tell you guys to go register for a political party or to wait for the next election. I know you guys just had an election. I heard that turned out great for you. But we're about to have one in the US. It's a fun time. Election years are always prime time to propagandize our brothers and sisters. How many people know freedom lovers who were all like, yeah, we got to get out of the system. And then the election comes around. They're like, wait, hold on. Let me go back in. That's going to be the solution. That's going to fix things. We got to be careful for falling for those dead ends. So for me, the way I've done this is, I can't claim that the path that I've been on is going to work for everybody. As I mentioned earlier, I don't use banks. I don't talk to the IRS. I don't have a cell phone. The phone that Miriam has, sometimes I use it when I'm with her. Thankfully, we use an above phone. We don't use a spy phone. But I really try to live this message of exiting from these systems that don't align with my values. And that's not easy. It doesn't make things very easy. Sometimes getting paid for things or transferring money around can be a challenge. I have used tools like cryptocurrency, like Sam was talking about earlier, specifically Monero for private transactions. I try to use whatever tools are available to me. I'm not a maximalist about anything. If it works, if it protects my privacy, and if it helps me advance my goals, then I'm going to use it, and if it's aligned with my values, of course. I don't feel like this is the one solution and everybody should do this and anything else outside of that is trash. I use what works when it works. And if I had one tip to share, it would be that you need to be adaptable, my friends. We're living in a very rapidly changing world. And if you're too rigid, it's going to be hard to maintain your privacy and your liberty. If you're stuck in your ways, and I understand this, that there's probably folks in here who have lived their whole lives, you've been working hard, and you've got like a pension, or you've got your money in some bank, and the idea of just totally changing your life around sounds scary, or sounds overwhelming, or it sounds impossible maybe. But I want to encourage you to challenge that thinking. I talked about this idea of exit and build, and again, thinking holistically, you could think about your financial situation. You could think about your food. We talked all about food and permaculture yesterday. You could think about, so we got the food, we got the money. Of course, these are two big areas that they came after people during COVID. How many people remember people getting debanked because they donated to the wrong cause, or because, like myself, I got kicked off YouTube in 2020. Thankfully, I've never been dependent on them for an income, never took a dime from Google or any of them. But a lot of people got kicked off Venmo, got kicked off PayPal and other transactions. So you can see plainly right there, the more dependent we are on these systems, which, by the way, don't align with our values. Go to weforum.org, the World Economic Forum /partners, and every single one of the banks you're using is listed on their partners. So by putting your money in there, you're basically supporting the exact people that are working against your very freedoms, right? Now, that doesn't mean it's easy. I don't know if you guys have credit unions out here, or I know there's similar institutions. That's better. It's at least a step towards something else to get out of the big banks. Not only that, when it comes to banks, I have a real problem with it that so many people are still using them. Again, it's not a judgment. Everybody has to choose their path and what's best for them. But did you guys know that JP Morgan Chase helped Jeffrey Epstein launder his money that he was using to traffic children? How many people have their money in a Chase bank right now? It's okay. It's okay. I'm not calling anybody out, but I'm just saying, right? If we want to live in line with our values and take personal responsibility, maybe we could consider an alternative. Every single bank was robbing not just the American people, but people around the world during the 2008 financial crisis, right? HSBC has been caught in human trafficking and drug trafficking, scandals. We could go on and on. So that's when I see that, I'm like, well, why do I want to give them my money and time? Why would I want to support that? Because, I could go on about the money side. It's a huge part of the equation, but in the interest of time, exit and build and thinking it holistically, you want to look at these different areas of your life. I'll recommend a few, but I encourage you on your own to go sit down, find some time, and really look at these different parts of your life. You've got your food. Are you dependent on the grocery store right now? Most of us are. It's not hard to become, it's hard to become independent completely, but we were talking about yesterday on our panel about food distribution systems and how we create that. That's what we're really focused on. How do we create alternative ways for us to grow clean, good, organic, pesticide-free food, and then get that distributed to different parts of your city, your country? Again, we're all here from different parts of the world, but focus on your community. For the good of everyone, focus on yourself. Focus on your own local community, and we will all get somewhere better. So we need to think of alternatives for food systems, the financial, economic systems, the education when it comes to the children. David was talking about that. And not only that, but the way you educate yourself. Stop consuming propaganda, even so-called awake channels that just tell you about the problems all day long. Why would you just keep shoveling that stuff down your throat if you know that it's just, ultimately, it's like doom porn. It's just there to tell you that the world's about to end. And by the way, my friends, I know some of those people. They make a lot of money off your clicks. They make a lot of money by telling you the world is about to end tomorrow. So maybe consider finding better sources of information. I'm not saying ignore the world and how things are going, but absolutely, we have a choice in what we consume. So I'm going to kind of wrap up here because I have no idea how much time I have left, but I'm sure I'm getting towards the end. And so just to kind of give you that sample, I encourage you to go further with that. Look at these different areas of your life. Food, money, health obviously is a big one. We all know this because of COVID. You don't want to be dependent and stuck on those systems. And again, I'm not saying it's perfectly easy. I know there are people who have illnesses and things they're dealing with that they currently feel that they need this pharmaceutical medicine to survive, or they're on dialysis. I get that there are things we need to figure out. I don't claim, and I don't think any of us claim to have this whole thing worked out. We just know that if we're ever going to create something better, we need to start thinking about what comes next. I like to relate this to the idea of the slave trade in the United States, but really the slave trade was all over the world. People started recognizing maybe this isn't right. Maybe we shouldn't be enslaving other human beings. Maybe we should find a better way to do this. And there would always be a guy, I'm sure, that came up and said, well, how are we going to pick the cotton? I mean, I hear what you're saying, but that just sounds too crazy. There's no way this system will work if we don't have slaves, right? People couldn't imagine that we could create a new system, that there would be ways to, organize ourselves without it. And I feel like that's what some people are kind of stuck in that mindset right now. The idea of something new is so far off or so distant for them that the only thing that they can think of is what we currently have, right? Well, if we change things, how would things function? We will find a way. We are beautiful. We are powerful. We are free. We have so much knowledge within each of us, so many gifts to share. And if we come together, we can create a better world. We don't need to know exactly what comes next to know what we have right now isn't working, right? Thank you. All right. So I'm gonna conclude now because I want to make sure Neil has enough time. Who's ready for Neil Oliver? But I want to encourage you guys to, after Neil wraps up, excited. After Neil wraps up, we're going to courteously get everybody the heck out of this room so we can get set up for the concert. And I do encourage you to stay, go get dinner, go to the workshops, and come back. But I'm performing tonight. For those who don't know, I perform music under the name 33. You can come ask me why later if you like. And I'm just going to give you a little short version of one of my songs. Is that okay? Is that okay? Cool. All right, so I'm going to play the whole thing tonight. I'm just going to give you one verse. It's called Awakening. And I feel like this song even more strongly after what happened at the airport. I've never felt more powerful than when I question the power, so full of themselves, lost in arrogance, but in reality, they're cowards. If you're searching for the devil, look no further than your government. The politicians are the puppets, but don't forget the false covenants. False prophets, mega churches making profits, the devil's loving it. They lie to your face and you take it. Do you prefer to be ruled? Wolves in sheep clothing, they got you fooled. They pull the wool over your eyes, feed you lies while they strategize and propagandize. Come on, my brothers and sisters. This is our moment to rise. They never saw us coming, but we are the antidote to their lies. We strive for truth and liberty. We strive to be better. Humanity's made mistakes. We're not perfect, but this ain't forever. I know we're destined to build a better world we know is possible. It's going to take struggle and making ourselves responsible for our choices and actions. We have the power to manifest that which we know we deserve. We are humanity at its best. Thank you guys so much. Thank you guys. I hope I didn't go too hard. Don't you go anywhere. Right, everyone. This guy. Give a standing ovation. Come on. Thank you. Thank you. Look. This guy. Wow. This guy is a true force of nature. I'm so honored to share the stage with Mr. Derrick Broze. We met here in this venue around a year ago, and I straight away knew this guy was a brother from another mother. You know, someone who's just blazing the trail and just taking it out to the people, empowering people, but doing so lovingly and so openly. And even when he encounters people who challenge his own views, he still holds an open heart for them. He's a man that truly
lives his message, and I've witnessed it firsthand in working with him over the last 6 months, and I've got so much to learn. He's been doing it a lot longer than I have, and his books are incredible. Last time I was here, I picked up all of his books, and there's just such a richness of information. So I just want to say thank you so much. It's been a beautiful journey working alongside you. And obviously, we've got another day left yet, so we're not going to do our big goodbyes right now, but I just want to say a huge thank you and big respect. Thank you to everyone at home as well. Please hit the share button. So let's get ready for Neil. Before we bring Neil on stage, as several of us have mentioned throughout this, it comes with many different challenges putting on an event like this, and Derrick and I have encountered many on the road to bringing us here. But this is just the beginning to the road to freedom. And every one of you that is here in person with us or have donated online has helped to make this happen, because we know about the cost of living at the moment in the United Kingdom. The day-to-day goods are going up, but I can tell you firsthand, the cost of putting on an event are extortionate right now. So we absolutely couldn't do this without you. So firstly, please give yourselves a round of applause in the room. And for those watching at home, if you can, please do donate to help us keep going. We've already got the next date in the diary for Mexico. I'm delighted to be going out there to speak out there as well. And we've got to keep this momentum going. We're building something here. So I just want to say thank you to our sponsors as well. Roll the ads.
The Conscious Resistance Network has been an independent media organization focused on empowering individuals through education, philosophy, health, and community organizing. We work to create a world where corporate and state power do not rule over the lives of free human beings. Our motto is leading by example and helping others in their pursuit of freedom. Visit theconsciousresistance.com to find our articles, documentaries, interviews, podcasts, books, and more. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.
The People's Reset is proud to partner with Expat Money, a world-renowned consulting firm dedicated to helping freedom-oriented individuals like you create a solid backup plan in offshore jurisdictions. Expat Money's global team of researchers, policy experts, and lawyers can assist with your personal strategy for living abroad, obtaining second passports and residencies, securing real estate, and mitigating tax obligations. Our friend, Expat Money founder and CEO Mikkel Thurup, is a lifelong traveler and immigration expert who developed his strategies on the ground, visiting over 100 countries, living in 9, and learning directly from legal experts around the world. And there's no better way to start your journey than by joining us for the upcoming Expat Money Summit this October 7th through the 11th. This event is completely free and will be held entirely online. Over 5 days, we'll dive into the crucial topics affecting those who value freedom above all. Get your free ticket here, 2024.expatmoneysummit.com.
Thank you very much. Now, we come to our final session of the day on the main program. I have the pleasure and honor of introducing a man who needs very little introduction. That, of course, is Mr. Neil Oliver. Now, Neil is a renowned historian and archaeologist, or at least I should say formerly known as a renowned historian and archaeologist. But thank goodness he took that path, because this gave this man a voice and a way to articulate that can help become a voice of reason in this time of unrest and uncertainty, helping us to navigate the rocky terrain of what we're going here with his restless curiosity in pursuit of the truth, but also in pursuit of what makes us human. And in defense of freedom, Neil has become a powerful voice and a fierce critic of the technocratic systems that we're resisting here today. But I think we may get a little hint of optimism tonight. We will see. With his eloquence, Neil has a unique ability to help us to explore these issues. And it's my honor to welcome Neil Oliver to the stage. Please give it up for Neil Oliver.
Hello, everyone. It's so huggy in here. Everywhere I go, I get hugged. What is it with all the long-haired men? Have you noticed? I counted 3 long-haired men in a row. which made me think of the line in Withnell and I, while I was sitting there watching all these long hairs, where Danny, the drug dealer, says, all barbers are in the pay of the government. Never get your hair cut because your hairs are your aerials. They receive signals from the cosmos and transmit them directly to your brain. So maybe there's something in it. I've said to a couple of people outside, I used to write speeches basically for events like this, but as time has gone on, I've found almost that to some extent I've said it all. I've said what I meant to say, and so now when I come to an event like this, what I try to do, as I did coming in yesterday, coming in this morning, talking to people, and then listening to some sessions this afternoon, I try to listen and perhaps get new ideas and reflect, because I mean everything I'm going to say to you here it's only my opinion, you know, and I offer up my opinion really like it's like letting a child go at kindergarten or nursery. You know, you send them out in the hope that when they come back they've learned something that they didn't know before, and you know, I feel like that with my opinions. I just put them out, then I listen to what happens, and then I try to draw from that. I also was listening to Derrick in particular there. I was listening to everyone this afternoon closely. Derrick made me feel like such a fraud, is the truth, because, you know, I've got feet of clay. I've got a bank account. You know, I am still enmeshed in the system. You know, and so standing amongst and with people who are constructively and creatively stepping beyond, I do feel quite fraudulent, you know, being invited up here to close the session. You know, those who find themselves ridiculous sit down next to me, to quote 90s pop band James. I mean, if you feel sitting here listening to other speakers that you're not actually doing it, that you're not actually active as an activist, well, you know, let me be the first person in that queue. But nonetheless, the time I've spent with you yesterday afternoon and this morning and today, I genuinely feel overwhelmed and humbled, and I'm not blowing smoke at all when I say that. It's absolutely genuine, and by some process that I think is probably ultimately healthy, I actually stand here now feeling that I know less than I thought I knew 4 years ago, or 3 years ago, or 2 years ago. I'm in this sort of Socratic process of realizing that in most meaningful ways, I don't know anything at all, but I do know that I don't know anything. And so I benefit greatly from being in the company of people like all of the people that you've been listening to and all of the people that I've been talking to, because I'm in this constant process of trying to work out what's happening. Clearly, for the first 5 decades of my life, I just didn't know what was going on. I had it all wrong. I was duped. I was as fooled as the next person. I was as trusting of the state and of authority as the next person. I make no bones about it. You know, I get picked up all the time, comments and, you know, to pieces that I put out online and things that I say on GB News and whatever, people saying, you know, welcome to the party, and, oh, you've finally woken up. You know, I hold my hands up. I was asleep. I was asleep for most of my life, and I don't pretend to have been any kind of oracle or to have known anything that was going on until really a rapid process of becoming aware began for me in 2020, like I'm sure it did for a lot of the people in this room. You know, as I say, in that trying to be true to that idea of listening to what people are saying here, and learning and processing it and moving forward with it. I listened to David talking about the Constitution of the United States of America, the Declaration of Independence, and talking about rights. And what he was reminding me to think of in that context was, you know, yes, that rights are received from God or from the universe or from nature or from natural or whatever it is you think about when you contemplate the transcendent. And therefore, no person can take those rights from you, me. But almost, I would say, the most important, and I've said this before, to me, it's the inalienable aspect of those rights, because I hadn't properly contemplated what inalienable meant until relatively recently. And in that it means that even if you want to give up your freedom, you can't, because your rights are inalienable. So even if someone comes to you and says, I want to enslave you, and you think, oh, actually, that would be quite straightforward. They'll tell me what to do. They'll tell me what to eat, when to go to work, when to go to sleep. Maybe I'll just be enslaved. The fact is you can't. That option is not available because your rights are inalienable. And it's actually in the moment when someone seeks to enslave you that you have no option, actually, if you're true to inalienable rights, but to say, I can't not be free. And you're going to have to take my freedom out of my chest along with my beating heart, because it's not mine to give. You'll have to take my freedom from me with life itself, which will make a lot of people think about, Mel Gibson says in Braveheart. But it is true, you can't, and that's where the responsibility and almost the onerous obligation of freedom kicks in, because you have to carry it. You have no obligation but to be free. You have no option but to be free. It's the obligation that transcends all. And I think that's very. And so I was thinking about that as I was listening to David, because I think some of these things are so important to contemplate. To think again about things that perhaps a lot of us have taken for granted. Yeah, I knew about the first couple of paragraphs of the Declaration of Independence, but it's only been in the last few years when I have seen my own freedom threatened that I've actually bothered to contemplate once again what the authors of that document actually meant. And you can also caveat that by saying it was a bit rich, coming from men who in many instances owned slaves, and yet they were writing about freedom and inalienable rights of men. But nonetheless, that's just a reminder from a couple of hundred years ago that we are all of us are just flawed human beings. So that even the founding fathers were just flawed human beings. I listened also to Sam talking about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. And I am no specialist in that area, but I am fascinated by it. And like Sam, I think I understand intuitively really the potential of the blockchain and that idea of being able to transact peer-to-peer. And that transaction isn't only limited to money, that you can also transact with information. And so fundamentally, I'm interested in the idea of the blockchain, because it can't be censored. Where's that? Where's that coming from? I can hear Derrick Broze. Is that a voice in my head, or is everyone hearing that? Has Derrick Broze got into my head? But I was thinking, while Sam was talking about blockchain, my shtick, if you like, online, even before I got into things that are controversial, and before I started making inadvertently making a name for myself as somebody, as some sort of, low watt polemicist, I was always in the business of reflecting on what history had to, how history could reassure us, in that almost everything that happens now, that some of which might be worrisome and the cause of anxiety, it's happened before. We can take some reassurance from it. So I was listening to the concept of blockchain and distributed ledger, which is another bit of the jargon, a bit of the lexicon that applies to cryptocurrency, is actually very, very old. In the Yap archipelago of islands in the Western Pacific, the people there no one really knows for how long, but possibly for thousands of years, had as the basis of their economy gigantic carved stones called rai, great big calcite donuts, a very hard rock carved into a donut shape. And some of these things are bigger than parked cars. They're enormous, and they don't move. They are where they are in a clearing, beside a path, wherever. They stay where no one ever moves them. And everyone knows the story of every rai. Every transaction, if you like, is remembered. And the longer the story that relates to a given rye adds to its value, because rye the ownership of a rye changes for something big. So that when a family needs a husband for a daughter, or vice versa, or where there's been a war between two clans and a peace settlement was being agreed, it was in those kind of momentous events that the ownership of a rye would change hands. And so that which didn't move, no one touched, had belonged to this clan here, is now understood to belong to that clan over there, maybe miles away, but it's their rye. And now an extra chapter has been added to that, and so its value has increased. And that's distributed ledger in a fundamental sense. No one touches it, no one moves it, everyone knows who it belongs to, and everyone knows every transaction going all the way back to its beginning. And it's absolutely extraordinary. These things, in large part, the raw material for these rye is not actually found in the mainland of the Yap archipelago. A lot of it comes from an island called Palau, which is scores of miles away across the open ocean. And the people were in the habit of going to Palau, to the outcrop of this calcite, chipping off somehow an enormous, weighing many tons, carving it into the familiar donut shape, and then fixing it to their dugout canoes or whatever, and moving it across the open ocean again and back to Yap. And on one famous occasion, a team coming back, they were within sight of land. They were almost about to make landfall, and this thing broke away from the canoes and it sank. It just dropped to the bottom of the ocean, never to be recovered. However, it's the most valuable rye because of its origin story, and transactions are still made based on the rye that's in the ocean, on the seabed. At any given time, it was owned by this family, and then it would change hands, and it would belong to that family. Nobody could touch it, nobody could see it, but its story was understood, and the value was there. And so, if like me, you can't get your head around crypto, or you can't get your head around blockchain, and you can't get your head around the distributed ledger, at least be reassured, as I am, by the fact that the underlying principle of it is ancient, and that the digital iteration that we know as Bitcoin and Ethereum and all of the rest of it it's just the latest iteration of a much older idea. And I find that very helpful. I find that very helpful to contemplate. Now, I was listening to Derrick saying the bit about they could have brought in a lot of people here and filled a lot of seats with the doom mongers and the people that have been pointed out. That's me. I am that soldier. I've spent the last 4 years being as miserable as sin to an audience several times a week. That is me. But as is famously said, it's never hard to distinguish between a Scotsman and a ray of sunshine. So, this thing about me feeling fraudulent. I've got a bank account. I'm a miserable bastard. I only look back. I offer no solutions. I point at other people, simultaneously pointing at myself. That's me. So anybody that feels that they're not pulling their weight, thank you. I love you too. Anyone that feels that they are not or have not so far pulled their weight in any of this, well, join that club, because I'm there with you. I was listening also when David said, another ponytailed man, when David was talking about, sort of being in the moment, and grasping the now, which absolutely is a state of mind that I try to be in because of my innate pessimism. And I was thinking about Kung Fu Panda, because it's in Kung Fu Panda that we learn from, is it Chi Fu? I can't remember, that yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, today is a gift, and that's why we call it the. And that's, and it's that concept is allowed to percolate all the way through to whatever, an animated feature for kids. If they get nothing else from it, at least they get that idea. I used to plan these talks, but now, as I say, I just want to be standing here in the moment, paying back to you that which I have acquired in the last few hours or the last couple of days at most. I went out for some wine last night with a lovely chap. I'm not sure if he wants to remain nameless or not, but given that I'm not sure, I won't say who that was, but we had a great conversation. Amongst other things, we contemplated, maybe leaving the country. Where would you go? I've had that conversation. My wife and I have that conversation all the time. If our circumstances made that possible, where would we go? Our circumstances don't make that possible. So we are going to ride this out here. Like the emperor penguins in Happy Feet, while others leave, we remain. You can see how shallow my philosophy actually is. Nigel was talking there about all the philosophical underpinnings. I get all of my philosophy from watching movies. But we were talking about, would we stay or would we go? And I was reminded of another movie, which is Buckaroo Banzai and His Adventures Across the Eighth Dimension. And Buckaroo Banzai's wisdom is, wherever you go, there you are, which is great wisdom. I think Einstein said something similar, but the idea is that, whatever it is you're trying to get away from is ultimately you, and wherever you go, there you are. And so all of these thoughts have been coming back to me most helpfully because of the time that I've spent here. These were not thoughts that I arrived with. All of these reminiscences and all of these thoughts are fresh. Dan Astin-Gregory, lovely man, so fond of Dan, so fond of all the people in here because of that almost that desperation that they radiate to get to somewhere better. And also, if it is desperation, I think it's because they understand that which is true, which is that we will win. We will, the natural order, which has been subverted, and I would be the first to admit, I don't know when that subversion of the natural order began or was achieved, but it has been subverted. But like a ball held under the surface of water, you can hold it down there for as long as you've got the strength, but the ball wants to be somewhere else. And eventually it will return there. So we will win. And Dan was saying that he hoped that I would offer up some optimism, which, God, I find it difficult. But solutions you want, I am not your man. But I was thinking about what would I offer in terms of what are the solutions to the predicament in which we find ourselves. If someone said to me, and I couldn't see them, let's say I was in a darkened room and so I didn't know who they were, but somebody said, what should I do in pursuit of the better life? Without a shadow of a doubt, I would simply say, get married and have kids. Now, if it's possible for you, get married, and if you can, have kids. That is my advice, because I can honestly say that the underpinning of everything that I do, everything that I have, and that which gives me the determination to keep moving forward, even though, as previously stated, I am a pessimist and a glass half empty kind of a person, is because of my wife and kids. For people, I think transformation, one of the speakers this afternoon definitely invoked the idea of transformation. And if you want to see, okay, I can only make it personal. As I said, I can only offer my opinions. I was going to call this talk not only but also, in that I think it's important to not to think that you have to find a single solution and drop everything that you've thought before, move away from your life of before and adopt a new one. It's just about opening your mind and embracing alternatives so that you're in a situation of not only, but also, so that you've got options, plan B, and whatever. So get married and have kids would be my number one solution. I mean, Trudy, to me, I call Trudy my Swiss Army wife, because whatever job I need to get done, the tool for getting it done lies with my wife. And when we had children, like everyone who's got kids will say, if you want to see a transformation in yourself, have a child, because that's real magic. And at times like these, when it feels like we're surrounded by a storm, and I suppose metaphorically speaking, we are at the eye of some sort of hurricane, and we don't know when or if it's going to blow out, but it will. The positivity that I get simply from my family, is 100% absolutely all and everything that matters to me and enables me to move forward. So that's the central piece of advice that I would give. I'm also, to get back to the whole cryptocurrency thing and the blockchain, which I find intimidating. I make no bones about it. God knows I read the books and I listen to the podcasts, and for about 15 or 20 seconds after the podcast finishes, I've got a handle on what blockchain is, and then it falls out of my head and I walk away from it and it's gone until I listen to the next one. But I do try. But I do have Luddite tendencies, which I'll admit to. I'm pessimistic, I'm a doom monger, I'm as miserable as sin, and I'm a Luddite. All of these things are true. And so in the not only but also category, while I pay attention to and I'm open to a concept like cryptocurrency and blockchain, I'm also about not only but also. And so while I have and do compose a lot of my work on a desktop computer, I do use a computer. I've also acquired a manual typewriter and reams of paper, and I can touch type. I was taught to touch type when I trained as a journalist many years ago, along with shorthand. I've still got 110 words a minute, T-line shorthand. Woo! Get me. And I've reacquainted myself with the keyboard of a manual keyboard, which is completely different from the kind of keyboard that you get with a computer. My kids, because my kids are completely on board. My kids, I feel so much sympathy, but I've heard so many stories about people for whom all of that's been happening in the last few years created a schism between relationships and within families. We didn't have that. I mean, my wife and I and my kid, we didn't take any of the medical interventions, the jabs. We didn't touch any of that. But in my extended family, they all did. Everybody in my extended family, my mum, my sisters, my mother-in-law, everybody else took the jabs. But even at that, although we had taken different paths there was no rancor, and nobody was upset with anybody for the path that they had. For the path that they had taken. But to get back to my kids bought me a Walkman. It's actually the latest model. It's called We Are Rewind. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a lovely metal, aesthetically very pleasing. I've started buying tapes again. We've always had in the house VHS players and VHS tapes. Some of them that go all the way back to tapes of Christmas movies that my wife made when she was a teenager. And we've still got them. We've got DVD players and piles of DVDs. We've got CD players and piles of CDs. We've got record players and vinyl. We've got all of these things. I buy hard copies of books all the time. I prowl around secondhand bookshops because I know with absolute certainty that all the stuff that's streamed and all the stuff that's available in that remote way is going to get tampered with. So in 5 years' time, or even now, perhaps, if you were to download, I don't know, To Kill a Mockingbird onto your Kindle, you've got no way of knowing if it's what Harper Lee actually wrote, because it's potentially been modified to suit the mores of the day. So we're stockpiling. If I was a multi-millionaire, if I was a millionaire, I would have an aircraft hangar piled high with books and tapes and CDs and DVDs and rolls of film. I would have all of that stuff in climate-controlled environment, because I think in the years ahead, that stuff is going to become, you talk about keeping solid gold and silver as investment, actual hard copy of the original works as intended by the author or by the musician or by the filmmaker or whatever, those are going to be worth their weight in gold. So that's part of how I cope. That's part of how I go in pursuit of my solutions. And I also wanted to talk in the context of currency about the Bradbury pound. Do you know about the Bradbury pound? Does everybody know about that? Hands up if you know about the Bradbury pound. For those that don't, in 1914, war was declared. The general populace, as they always do when a war is declared, got anxious about the £5 notes typically that they had in their pockets. At that time, 1914, £1 was worth £160 in today's money. So a £5 note was a great deal of money. And people were anxious about if there's a war, if the economy crashes, is this going to become valueless? So the banks were suddenly aware that they knew that they didn't have enough gold to let people redeem their gold if they were to present these bank notes. And so the bankers went scuttling to David Lloyd George, who was the Chancellor of the Exchequer at the time, and they laid out the problem to him. And they must have already had the plan prearranged, because a bill was hustled through Parliament over the course of a 4 days of bank holiday weekend, and Treasury notes were released. Now, these were not bank notes released by the Bank of England. These were Treasury notes that were issued, underwritten by the value, the wealth of the country. So the creativity, the industry, the potential muscle power of the people, everything that you can think of that is there in the innate value of a nation was what was not gold, but it was all of that potential was what was underwriting these Treasury notes. And crucially, they were interest-free and debt-free. Interest-free and debt-free money. And so the banks reopened, the people turned up with their bank notes and were asked, rather than gold, will you take these Treasury notes? They were called Bradbury pounds because the permanent secretary to the Treasury at the time was John Bradbury, and he had signed them. They were printed on stamp paper because they were short of time. So these Bradbury pounds, as they became known, were going out, and all the people took them. The people took them because they had faith in themselves, because ultimately they were the country, and that they were persuaded that value underwriting these things made them credible. And so the Bradbury pounds went out, the banks reopened, there was no run on the bank, the problem was solved. But of course, the bankers, their immediate short-term problem having been sold, were panic-stricken because debt-free, interest-free money, where's the return on that? And so within weeks, within a matter of days, actually, they were back at David Lloyd George, and they persuaded him to start withdrawing the Bradbury pounds and to get back into the old game of buying and selling government bonds at 3 to 4% interest. Britain's national debt in 1914 was about £650 million. By 1919, in the time of the Treaty of Versailles, the national debt was £7.5 billion, because the bankers, having got back to the buying and selling of interest debt-laden bonds, had made a killing from the killing. Now, not only, but also crypto, holding gold, transacting in all sorts of different ways. But it is worth contemplating that something that solved an enormous problem in the past could, in a modernized iteration of the same thing, solve the problem again. Now, it's not the cure-all. It's not some magical panacea, and it's open to be corrupted by the government of the day if the government is malign. But nonetheless, it's just a different way of thinking. I think something else that was coming out of some of the presentations that were made this afternoon was about democracy, and we heard about the power of the people, which is all well and good, but I myself am suspicious about majorities. I'm sure a lot of people in here have learned to be wary of majorities for the same reason as me, which is to say that if lockdowns and mandated vaccinations had gone out as referenda to the British population, the majority would have waved through both, without a shadow of a doubt, because that would have been the decision of the majority. And that would have changed the situation radically. So I'm wary about, democracy in principle, the rule of the people governing themselves is a grand idea, but it's really only the basis for a conversation. You've got to be very careful about how much you empower the majority, because the majority can very quickly become the mob, and the mob is always and only a tool of the state or the elite, because they influence and drive the mob using the things they control, which are propaganda and media and all of the rest of it. And down through history, there's never been a popular revolution. The French Revolution, that wasn't done by the people. That was reverse engineered to look like that after the fact. That was basically one crime family knocking out another crime family to take control of the governance of France. Likewise with the Russian Revolution, that wasn't the peasants storming the Winter Palace to get rid of the Romanov czars. There's nothing of the kind. The English Revolution, Cromwell and all of that, these were not popular revolutions. And even if they were, I'm wary around the idea of majorities. Now, what I would say is important to get back to remembering is the power that the jury system, as it was originally conceived, the power that the jury system has to empower the people to govern themselves. That is not achieved with voting every 4 or 5 years in a general election. That is an optical illusion. That's a mirage. That is meaningless and does nothing. The idea of the jury trial, as it was originally conceived, as it was actually thought about in terms of Anglo-Saxon history, in terms of and the Anglo-Saxons had acquired the idea from ancient Greece. It's a very old idea that just kept on being reiterated. It features in Magna Carta, 1215, but it wasn't invented for Magna Carta, the idea of the king being brought to account before a jury of his peers. That was just an iteration of a very old idea. And the point with the jury trial, which has been completely traduced and corrupted down through the decades, empowered the jury to judge not just the guilt or innocence of the accused, but the justice of the law itself. They could actually, as well as judging on the accused, they could actually find the legislation that related to the case inadequate, suboptimal, unsatisfactory, and cast it out. They could act so that the law, which is coming down from on high in 1215 or whatever, it was the king. In more recent times, it's the government legislating, and the legislation could be judged for its justice moment by moment in real time by the jury. And majority verdicts are a corruption of the entire system. It ought to be, and it was originally designed to be, that in a jury of 12, if 11 people said guilty and one person said not guilty, then the verdict of that jury was not guilty. Because the principle was that the individual, in the face of the majority, had to be taken into account. And so the very idea now of majority verdicts is a complete corruption of the idea. And so in terms of looking at solutions, I've kind of become a proto-anarchist. I've got to the point now that if I was offered a binary choice between totalitarianism and anarchy, I'd have to go with anarchy. And in the same way that 5 years ago, I would not have described myself as a free speech absolutist. But where we are now, the way things have gone, if it's a choice between everyone being able to say anything they want, incite whatever, be as vile, be as provocative, say the most dreadful things, whatever, as well as all the good stuff, or every day getting an email telling you the 10 things you have to say today, and if you don't say all 10 of them, you might not be able to put fuel in your car or put food on your table. If it's a binary choice between those, then I'm sorry, I'm a free speech absolutist and I'm an anarchist. So it is reflecting on for me, it's reflecting on the past, and it's contemplating the things that are in my control, and it is paying attention to the things ultimately that I value. That is the basis of how and it's only my opinion, that's how I have sought a way and found a way to navigate through this encircling, swirling madness in which we find ourselves. And the not only but also philosophy that I've kind of scribbled down on the back of an envelope effectively, it's about it's a response to the overweening idea that's out there from the powers that ought not to be, which is something I just learned today from Nigel and will be passing off as my own from this point on. The powers that ought not to be. And where was I? What was I thinking about there? Somebody throw that back at me. What was I talking about? No, it wasn't free speech. Yeah, that thought has definitely gone. Isn't that interesting? Maybe that's the natural order trying to tell me something. Maybe that was a thought not worth having. What I'm coming to is that being told from on high that there is only one solution to the problem, this collectivist idea, this idea that one size fits all solutions come down from the Summit for the Future, or from the World Health Organization, or from the World Economic Forum, or the United Nations, or the Trilateral Commission, or the Club of Rome, or whatever, or the Bilderbergs. Any top-down solution is, in and of itself, doomed to failure. My friend Nick Hudson of Panda, he's got what he calls Hudson's razor, which is a heuristic that says if you're being told it's a global crisis, if you're told there's only one solution to it, and if any dissent from that solution, it has to be crushed by censorship and silencing. If those three things come together for Hudson's razor, you're dealing with a scam, right? So that's how you do it. So by definition, the climate crisis is a scam. You know, COVID was a scam. All of these things, and the not only but also philosophy is about the idea that the top-down, one-size-fits-all solution is a refusal on the part of the stupid, clever people that think they know how to run the world. It's the refusal to contemplate, far less to embrace complexity. They are not awake to the complexity of what it is to be human and alive. And it's the subsidiarity, and it's the local solutions, and it's the kind of activities that Derrick and Dan are active about. It's therein that the solutions lie, because it's those things that embrace complexity and allow the people that are actually at the bleeding edge of the problem to come up with the solution that best suits them, rather than trying to gerrymander somebody else's solution from 1,000 miles away and making that be the solution to the problem. You know, so that is where not only but also comes from. I'm running out of time. I've run out of time. I just want to sum up. You know, as I say, I stand before you as somebody who is as guilty, who has been as complicit in the problem as anybody you can think of. You know, I'm still transacting via a bank account. You know, I'm still, you know, buying all of my food from supermarkets. I'm still doing all of these things. But I am awake to the situation in which we find ourselves. And it's because of my, I suppose, the humility, I suppose, that I've realized how little I actually know that makes me come to events like these. Because as soon as I walk into, you know, when I upstairs where the meeting rooms are, as soon as I'm in there and people come up to me and talk, I know I've done the right thing just by turning up. And when I'm in here with all of you, I know I've done the right thing just by turning up. And so I'm not a solutions person. I consider myself, I suppose, all I really am is everyman. I think if what I have said over the last 4 years has chimed with people, it's only because the people that hear what I'm saying already know it. I'm not actually telling any of you anything that you don't know. And that's why when you hear me say it, it registers, because all I'm doing is articulating thoughts and wisdom and knowledge and common sense and experience that all of you have. The truth is like electricity. I had one of those vibration experiences upstairs. Did you all do the vibrating chairs? I thought my fillings were going to come out. The truth is like electricity. It looks to get to earth. And the rod that it runs through is us. We channel the truth. And when it passes through us, we feel it. Lawrence van der Post, A Story Like the Wind. The story is like the wind. It comes from a far off place and we feel it. The truth is like that. You don't need to be told it. It passes through you whenever you come in contact with it. It's like if you're in the pub or you're sitting around a dinner table and the chat's going really well and you say something that just makes the whole room fall apart. You come away with this perfect quip. 99 times out of 100, if you analyze it in afterwards, you didn't compose the thought. It just was on your lips and you said it. It came from somewhere else and it made everybody laugh because it's the truth. That is why it's funny, because everybody that hears the quip knows it's true, and that's what makes them laugh out loud. And the truth is like that, and that's really all I have been able to do for the last 4 years. You know, people that come up to me and they say it to me all the time. You said the thoughts that were in my head, and if I have done that, I am inordinately, inexpressibly grateful for having been able to do that. So as I say, I just stand before you as every person. I've got all of the same concerns. I make all of the same mistakes. I have been every bit as ineffectual in grasping the nettle of moving on to the next phase. But I'll say this and close. Just by standing here with you, I know I'm doing the right thing. Thanks very much. Okay, nice. Hey, more hugs, more hugs.
Yeah, let's make some noise for Neil Oliver. Yeah, you guys have a good day. Awesome. Wow.
Neil said more hugs. Hugs, you can't overdose on hugs. You know, some vitamins you can overdose on, there's upper limits, but hugs, you can keep going. So keep grabbing the hugs.
We got a couple of announcements before you guys all exit the room. And again, thank you to everybody at home who's been tuned in. We hope you'll join us next time because you're about to miss out on a bunch of awesome workshops and a concert. But thank you for joining us today, everybody at home.
Now, we know that no one likes to be told what to do. So in a moment, we're going to voluntarily ask you to depart as swiftly as you can because we've got quite a bit of setup to do in here for our evening concert. And we encourage you to get your dancing shoes on tonight. Get ready to express yourself on the dance floor. No one's going to mandate that you dance, but we voluntarily suggest that you come and boogie. But we've also got 5 wonderful workshops to close out the day right after this session. So we're handing over to Miriam to tell you what's coming up.
And if you're planning on attending any of the workshops right now this evening, go ahead and take a pause for me. Don't walk out of that room just yet. There are updates on almost all of the workshops that we have going on right now. So with Dub Effects, Rebel Music, that's going to be in Manifestor's room. And if you don't know where the rooms are at, they're upstairs. You walk upstairs and you have 3 rooms to the right. And Clive DeCarl's workshop is now on his room on the far left. And there's another workshop in the middle on the middle left. So regenerative culture with Yoshi, that's going to be happening in the middle room to the right. And Clive, like I said, the last room on the left. Enjoy making love with the universe. That sounds so beautiful with Kevin. It is going to be upstairs as well. And the last one with Angus, that is going to be upstairs as well. So please just make your way upstairs. Don't go to the Green Park. We're all here inside upstairs. Enjoy.
All right. Yeah, and with that, guys, thank you so much for joining us. As Dan said, please exit if you can. We'll see you at the workshops and back here around 7 for the concert. Thank you, everybody at home. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you. Good night. Let us know in the comments what you've enjoyed this evening. Let's go. Enjoy your night wherever you're partying tonight. Enjoy.